guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, and welcome to the opening of Powering the Future, Leveraging Digitalization for Efficiency, Resilience, and Decarbonization. Today, we're gathered here in Versailles for a special event led by the International Energy Agency and the Digital Demand-Driven Electricity Networks Initiative 3DEN, with the support of the Ministry of Environment and Energy Security of Italy. My name is Anna Rovzar, and I have the great pleasure of moderating today's session. So a warm welcome to our audience here in Versailles, but also to those joining us online through the live stream, which will be following throughout the event. Now, to start our event, it's my pleasure to invite our opening speakers to join here on stage. So if I could please invite Dr. Brian Motherway to join us here, as well as Ms. Valeria Piazza to join us, and Mr. Mark Radka. Please do join us on stage, and if I can ask for a round of applause. So we will first be hearing from Dr. Brian Motherway, who is the head of the Energy Efficiency Division at the IEA. Dr. Motherway oversees the IEA's vast work on energy efficiency, including expanding the scope through digitalization, and standing at the helm of the annual Global Energy Efficiency Conference that starts and gathers us here today. So without further ado, Dr. Motherway, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Anna, and thank you, everybody. It's great to see you all here today. We are here in Versailles in a 3-day festival of energy efficiency among people who are so interested in this topic that they're willing to sit all afternoon in a dark room rather than go outside to sunny Versailles. So I commend your commitment and I really thank you all for coming. This is our biggest ever global conference on energy efficiency. Over the next 3 days, we're going to have 100 countries converging on Versailles, including many government ministers, many CEOs of companies, many thought leaders, people bringing a really wide range of perspectives to many questions around energy efficiency. And with a focus on action, how can we accelerate progress that we can make on energy efficiency around the world, because we need to accelerate progress. This event is a particular highlight, certainly for me personally, because I think this topic is something on which our work has been growing in the last years, thanks to our friends in the Italian government, really thinking about almost a new paradigm of efficiency that isn't just about how much energy a device uses over the course of a year, but how do we think about dynamic integrated energy systems that are balancing variable renewables with people's changing lifestyles, with supply and demand, with unlocked by digital technologies that can manage grids better, can give more control to people, can optimize things in new ways, producing cleaner, more reliable, cheaper electricity and bringing the benefits of electricity to all. There are many technical dimensions, technology dimensions that which I'm sure we'll talk about, but for me, at the end of the day, this is a people question. This is a society question. How do we govern these complex systems that involve so many government departments, so many aspects of policy, from cybersecurity and privacy to grid management, electricity pricing, infrastructure development, but also how do we think about people benefiting from what technology is now making possible in terms of better access to energy, more affordable energy, better control over their comfort and well-being through digital technologies. These are not simple questions, but the prize for getting it right is very substantial. And therefore, I'm really delighted and grateful that we have so many big brains here with us today. And I want to thank Vida and her team for putting together a really fantastic event. I think we're all going to learn a lot. And I also want to say thank you, Vida, for bringing such a wide range of voices to this discussion. We're going to hear many, many different perspectives, and I think that's going to be excellent. None of this would be possible without the support we get from the government of Italy, and we're really grateful for that. So in handing the floor to Valeria, I really want to thank you and all of your government colleagues for the support and great collaboration we get from you, and you'll be hearing more about the collaboration over the course of this afternoon. So with that, let me please introduce to say some opening remarks Valeria Piazza, who is the Attaché for Energy and Industrial Policies at the Permanent Delegation of Italy to the IEA and the OECD. Valeria, please. You can, of course.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. First of all, let me thank, on behalf of the Italian permanent delegation to the international organization in Paris, the EIA, for organizing the 18th Annual Global Conference on Energy Efficiency and today's important event. The conversation that we are about to have will allow us to link the concept of energy efficiency and decarbonization to the one of the grid digitalization. To reach the net zero objective by 2015, we need, of course, to increase investment in energy efficiency and in grid automation, especially in the emerging countries. Italy, as has been mentioned by Brian Motherway, is actively engaged in this direction. We can leverage on a technical, historical, technological leadership in the field of smart infrastructure. And for this reason, we have contributed to the IEA work with a special project named TRIDEN, Digital Demand-Driven Electricity Network, with a voluntary contribution from our Ministry of Environment and Energy Security. This project was conceived to provide actionable guidelines to decision makers on the policy, regulatory, technology and investment that are needed to accelerate process in power system decarbonization and modernization. In fact, this project, in our opinion, can be a vivid example of a concrete application of a sustainable twin transition where digitalization is the instrument and the vehicle of smart, resilient and clean energy system. Digitalized grids represent indeed on one hand the most powerful tool for an effective integration and distribution of renewable energy, and on the other hand, many of the new technologies that are necessary to achieve the decarbonization objective by 2015 need a strong, automated and digitalized grid. Moreover, digitalization is strictly coupled with energy efficiency, and it leads to reduced energy consumption for households, and by consequence, allow to achieve a significant saving for consumers. This is, of course, another very important aspect, especially in this very moment. To take a step forward along the path of an efficient, digitalized and clean energy system and to achieve the net zero emission target, TRIDEN is, for the Italian government, a crucial milestone. But to boost its impact, the international cooperation is absolutely essential. And for this reason, the Italian government hence encourage other countries and organizations to join this initiative and actively contribute to it. Looking forward to hear your discussion, I wish you a fruitful dialogue. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Valeria. Thank you for those kind words, but also thanks again to you and all of your colleagues for the support of this. And as Valeria said, we're working in the context of a major project for us, TRIDEN, which you're going to hear more about today. And you'll hear, in fact, we're launching a flagship report from this project looking at these issues, how to drive greater levels of investment in smart technologies and grids in ways that bring benefits to the grids, but to the people, making use of those grids, making use of that electricity and energy. And one important aspect of that work is looking at what works in practice through a number of pilot projects taking place around the world. And we're very fortunate that those pilot projects are being managed by good friends of ours, a good friend of mine, Mark Radka, and his team in UNEP, who are looking after many aspects in relation to energy efficiency questions, but in this case, some really exciting projects going on in the context of TRIDEN. So, Mark, I'm very happy to hand the floor to you. Mark is the Chief of the Energy and Climate Branch of the United Nations Environment Programme based here in Paris. Mark, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brian, and excuse me, a warm welcome and thanks to all of you who, as Brian pointed out, chose to sit in the dark room rather than be outside in a very delightful spring afternoon here in Paris. So thanks for this opportunity. We're really grateful. The TRIDEN project, as we call it, is the latest in a long line of what I think of as illustrious cooperation efforts, collaborative efforts between UNEP and the Italian Ministry of Environment and Energy Security, most of them related to clean energy finance. And it's also a good example of many joint activities that we've undertaken with the IEA over the past several decades. But to my knowledge, it's the first time that our three entities have come together. And so it's a very good opportunity to work, our three organizations, and draw on our individual strengths, which in the case of UNEP, in this project, is something we call transactional finance. And by that we mean getting money to flow toward good energy ideas. And in conjunction with that, or maybe upstream of that, are the business models that actually prove to be persuasive to those who are lending money to entrepreneurs and businesses. So we know, as Brian pointed out, digital technologies can help us decarbonize the power sector, the power system at lower cost, while improving system reliability. You had a much longer list of positive attributes of coupling the energy sector transformation with digitalization. But there are many models, a lot of simulations, but surprisingly few real-world examples of what works and what doesn't work and why it works in certain contexts and so on. So from the perspective of this project, the opportunity is that there is a need for real-world projects that allow us to quantify the impact and identify the sorts of bottlenecks that crop up that would hinder commercialization. And in the end, this is about commercialization. It's absolutely critical to getting to the scale of the potential. So our role in UNEP, in the 3DEN project, is basically to get this data, to get this real-world experience. So we, as our part of a joint effort, we launched a call for proposals in September 2021. There were close to 30 submissions received. A jury, I don't know if I used that right term, but a panel evaluated those, and we settled on 4 that are now underway as, you could call them pilots or experiments or data-rich environments for learning. One of them, I'll just list them briefly, and you're going to hear a lot more about them, which I think is the exciting part of the afternoon. So in India, a consortium is applying cloud-based digital twinning technology to electrical distribution grid in New Delhi, the first instance of this kind of, I would say, experiment in that country. In Brazil, a different group is applying digital technologies to increase energy efficiency in social housing. Third, Colombia, again in South America, but investigation of how digital tools can signal flexibility in customer demand and allow the distribution system operator to reduce network congestion. So sort of information flow from which customers would allow their service to be interrupted or downgraded or, something, we'll hear the details later, but basically optimization of the system. And finally, in Morocco, a water bottling company is putting in place a digital energy management system, state-of-the-art, in its plants. So, 4 different experiments, 4 different learning opportunities. Looking ahead, we're absolutely confident that the pilot projects will provide very rich use cases of digital technologies, information from which will make replication at a commercial scale more likely. Data from the project, we also believe, we hope, will feed into your own analysis at IEA and your work on power system modernization, including the development of additional tools and guidance that prove so valuable to the world. So in short, we see a wealth of information coming out of this sort of field application of the technologies, different technologies, that will help lead to a decarbonized, resilient, and smart power system. So I think we're going to hear much more in detail and much more interesting detail from the speakers when we get to that part of the program. Thank you again for joining us. It's a pleasure to be with you, and like the rest of you, I look forward to a really entertaining and informative afternoon. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mark, and again, thanks for the collaboration. So thank you, Mark, thank you, Valeria, thank you, everybody. The ceremonials are over, you're getting onto the real stuff now, so we're going to step off, stage left, and hand back to Anna for the first panel. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much to our opening speakers for really having set the tone for the remainder of this event, for our panelists, for setting the scene speakers, for our keynote addresses to build on. And in fact, just as a reminder to our audience here in the room, this side event takes place in the framework of the 8th Annual Global Conference on Energy Efficiency that starts within the next 24 hours, taking place over the next 2 days here in Versailles, gathering CEOs, ministers, and senior energy leaders from across the world for discussions on the state of energy affairs, energy efficiency in the world, and many of which are present here in this room. So let me just maybe walk you through the agenda very quickly so we know what we've got in store. We've heard from our opening speakers just now. We will now dive into a first changemaker conversation on some of the big picture thinking that's going on in power system modernization and digitalization. We'll then go to a central pillar of today's event, hearing some highlights of the 3DEN initiative, and more particularly the first flagship report that is launched today. We'll then have a brief networking and coffee moment, and then we will dive into 2 separate discussions, looking more concretely into what digitalization actually looks like in emerging markets and developing economies, as was just mentioned with these pilots, and then we will look towards the future in the 3rd and final discussion on what power systems will look like in the coming decades, what we can start doing about that today, and how international collaboration really helps and can really shift the needle. That is a little bit the full picture of today. We are live throughout the event, just for our audience online and here in the room to know. And without further ado, I'd like to move into our first conversation and invite the speakers of that conversation to join me here on the stage. So please, Ms. Audrey Ziebelman, Laura Sandis, Rina Suri, and Rosanna Santos to join us online, and please give them a round of applause. So hope that this works. Yes, it does. That's a good start. So to build on this first discussion, which should be rather broad to kick things off, we know that we're talking about power system modernization, digitalization. Within that, power systems are obviously the bedrock and the backbone of delivering the energy transition, and a lot is going on in this space. And we'd like to zoom out a little bit in this discussion to really understand what is going on, how do we make sense of this, and try to manage some of the complexity around this. And I think we're really in exceptional, in the presence of exceptional speakers that are internationally known to be thought leaders on this and to really be shifting the needle in this space. So maybe, Audrey, if I can start with you, you advise multiple organizations on how to decarbonize the power sector. You've held numerous senior positions in companies, regulators, government, industry, entrepreneurs, and really have been working on some of the trickiest parts of the energy transition. Can I ask you for your take on some of the immediate challenges that you see and how we should be looking at that going further out?
Thank you. And first of all, and thank you to the IEA for hosting this. I think if anything that's happening, and we know around the world there are probably thousands of events happening and talking about the energy transition, but I think this may be the most important one occurring. To me, what we need to be thinking about more than anything else is that digitalization of the power systems, the tools that support the integration of renewables, the integration of distributed energy resources, the capability to manage the data that is going to be required in order to electrify our economies is not a thing to add, but actually is a gateway for what we need to do. And we need to be thinking about what are the policies and practices that are in place today that need to be changed so that the integration and the use of data and digitalization and tools for basically both designing, developing, and implementing a decarbonized grid are the first thing that we start looking at. And for me, the biggest challenge I think we have is that we think about this as something that utilities should be building themselves, when in fact, it's something that I think governments should be insisting upon and utilities should be using so that we can move things forward. So I like to use the analogy, when we built the internet, we didn't go to individual cities and say, do you think you would like to have a digital version so that you could do commerce, and would you build it for yourselves? Instead, on an international level, we built the protocol around connecting to the World Wide Web. What are the aspects of interoperability? How do we get matters on? How do we protect data? And as a result, we were able to build the platforms that allowed us to then expedite a digital future, and so that wherever you go in the world, and I used it today, you can use Uber, and it works the same way. And we need to start thinking about the grid as an extraction, a digitalization universe so that we can make those tools, because as I could tell you as a system operator, one of my most frustrating moments was to discover that I was having challenges on integrating renewables in the system that were the same challenges that people were seeing in California, in Texas, in the UK, in Italy. And we were all stumbling through it, when in fact what we should have been doing is developing the digital capabilities to allow us to model what does the system look like when we retire fossil and we add renewables, and what things do we need to do in advance. And we should be doing that on a global scale, not on an individual scale. So I will turn it over to the rest of my panelists, but I believe that the role today, and if we leave anything today, it should be the fact that we should be moving in a direction that digitalization is a first order business that we need to think about, and that as an international agency, we should be thinking about not as individual demonstrations, but what are the core capabilities that every country is going to have, and how do we design protocol that can be universally available and ease, so that, because time, as you know, is not on our side. Thank you.
I agree. Thank you so much, Audrey, for putting that very clearly top of mind, what it is that we should be thinking about. And I'm sure I can already see that your fellow panelists want to pick in on that. That's a very good sign. Laura, if I may turn to you, you bring a vast track record of experience. You're a true advocate for the low carbon economy. You've been previous member of UK Parliament, chaired the UK government's Energy Digitalisation Task Force, and chair of the Green Alliance as well. Could I ask you for your take on this, to build on this? How should we, according to you, understand the current context and pivotal moments that we're facing in the power system field, and see where we should be going from now on?
Thank you, and I just want to say everything Audrey says is absolutely crucial, and I think particularly at an international conference, this is the sort of forum that really needs to harness these international assets, knowledge and expertise that we can all share, benefit from, and, to be frank, as Audrey says, accelerate our transition, because we don't have a lot of time. I just wanted to paint, not that there's anybody in this room, of course, that doesn't believe that digitalization is a crucial part of the transition, but just in case there were any doubts, I just wanted to paint from a UK perspective, because it's the same in many other markets. So when we look at the future, we are turning this whole energy system upside down, and I'm not sure that everyone in the utility sector really understands this. So think about the complexity. Currently in the UK, we have 400 people who run the energy sector, and they all know each other's golf handicap. That's wonderful. We are now moving to 100 million actions and assets onto the system. Now, that is not going to be done in an analog way. So digitalization is not a nice to have, it's a necessity. The other component that absolutely the energy sector has missed over decades, and that is the power of customers. If you think that in 2035 we will have as many EVs on the system in the UK as equivalent to 3 nuclear power stations, right? We have to unlock that asset. We have to enable it to participate, to deliver us an efficient and optimized system. Currently, the energy sector puts the customer into 6 archetypes. Amazon divides us into 150,000 different archetypes. We are going to have to understand customers in a totally different way. We spend our life worrying about the weather. Well, I've never seen the weather take price signals or follow legislation. But actually, strangely enough, customers are really boring. We all get up more or less at the same time every morning. So we need to have a huge level of insight. And the last point about what the system needs, net zero is a really interesting sort of model, economic model. It is an optimization model. It is a productivity model. It is about getting more from less. And the energy sector has been quite resistant and sort of tolerant of waste right across its whole system design. And we need to really optimize carbon, cost, and capacity. And those are my 3 drivers by which digitalization can find the waste, deliver optimization, deliver a better experience for customers, and unlock the decarbonization that is absolutely crucial. So, as I say, if we continue down an analog way, we will have system collapse, we will be absolutely overbuilding right across the board, and we won't be capturing all those assets to decarbonize at speed, at cost, and maximizing capacity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Laura, for adding such dimensions to Audrey's points and to really be showing what this is going to be all about. Maybe to invite Rina to come in here. Rina Suri, you're Executive Director of the India Smart Grid Forum. You bring 20 years of experience in smart grid storage, electric vehicles. You're Global Ambassador for Energy Web Foundation in India. Can I ask you, if what Audrey and Laura are talking about is essentially perhaps architectural shift, really. How do you see that from your perspective, coming in from India and the work that you do at ISGF?
Sure, thank you, and a very good afternoon to all of you. I take this opportunity to thank India International Energy Agency for having me here as with this esteemed panelists, and I'm really honored, and it's a pleasure to be a part of this global conference here in this beautiful city of Versailles. So. And thank you, Anna, for the kind introduction. So as part of the Paris Agreement, several countries have set their net zero targets, as my fellow panelists have already mentioned, and to be net zero by 2045 or 2070. And globally, the globally accepted pathways to net zero is to electrify almost all activities, human activities that are there, and all sectors have to be electrified to the extent possible, and decarbonize the power sector with the, instead of using the polluting fuels, to go for the green energy and green hydrogen. So for this strategy to be successful, and the power systems in each of these countries, the net zero target for the power systems have to be met in the next 10 to 15 years. And these places, this places an onus to all these countries for net zero in the next decade, which is like 2030 to 2040, and which is a very tall target. And with the kind of transition that we see in the power sector today, with electrons flowing in both directions, today, like, with huge renewables are getting integrated to the grid, and which are intermittent in nature and connected to the grid, and the power system operators are finding it very difficult to manage this kind of load which is getting connected, how much it's generating, what kind of load the customers are intaking. So with this kind of new scenario and going forward, so a huge demand getting generated with the electric vehicles coming into play. So the power systems will be like, a very difficult mix to manage for our power system operators. And to manage this kind of power systems and with this unprecedented generation resources that is getting connected to the grid, it is essential to have control on both generation and load through the automated control systems, and have flexible resources getting connected to the grid. So according to, I'd like to highlight, for particularly talking about the Indian power sector and the transition that we are seeing. According to the IEA reports projections, that Indian power sector is set to grow, to the extent of over 1,500 gigawatt by 2040, and over 1,500 out of this 1,500 gigawatt, over 800 gigawatt is expected to come from the renewable sources. So, considering this large share of renewables that is getting connected to the grid, the generation in the generation portfolio, the IEA estimates that there is a requirement of about 85% flexibility for the Indian power sector, and which we have to achieve by 2040 to be able to manage the huge renewables that are getting integrated, and which will be a huge challenge for to manage for our system operators. So therefore, to effectively manage large RE, a number of flexibility resources have to be integrated. We have to build demand side flexibility, power plant flexibility, have energy storage systems in place, and have the right policy, market and regulatory solutions in place for short-term and medium-term basis. So lastly, I would just like to again emphasize on the fact that with this kind of a transition and achieving the net zero, we are looking to have the flexibility has to be harnessed in all sectors of the energy system, including the generation, the distribution, and the transmission altogether. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rina. Many shifting parts there. Excellent to hear this from India's perspective as well, where so much is happening. Maybe we would like to move to another place where tremendous change is taking place, and that's in Brazil. Rosana Santos, I'd love to hear from you. You're the executive director of E+, so Energy Transitions Institute. You've spent many years working with leading utilities, especially leading vast smart grid technology expansion across Brazil and Latin America, so very well placed here to be commenting on this. Given the many changes that Brazil's electricity system is going through now, how do you see, let's say specifically in the large deployment of distributed solar PV, how do you see digitalization making a difference and really helping in this space?
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much for me being here, for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here with such a feminine panel. We have to do this remark. It's a all-women panel, which is great. Brazil. It's no doubt that digitalization is kind of key for us to move from where we are today in terms of operational efficiency of how to operate the system. I mean, in Brazil, we have a particularly different problem in terms of renewables integration, because we can use the hydropower plants in order to foster flexibility. So we do not need a lot of very complicated intelligence in order to do this kind of system operation. But this said, without digitalization, we will never have the demand as a part of the equation. And this is something that we are desperately in need there, to get the demand to respond and also to sustainably integrate distributed distributed generation, solar distributed generation, because with some digitalization, we can better market the energy price that those guys are getting. So the way it is today, we are just getting net metering, and this is not okay. For example, with smart grid and smart meters, we could do better. We could do better tariff structure. So it's a must. This said, it is expensive. It's awfully expensive. Tariff in Brazil is already very, very high. The way regulatory tariff is set in Brazil is an incentive regulation. So every asset that goes into the distribution company goes directly into the regulatory asset base, and in the end, it's tariff. And people cannot pay this amount of money. So a cost-benefit analysis has to result positive, and clearly positive. All the positive side of this equation has to bring value to the society. And as long as this equation is not so clear in terms of costs and benefits, I do not see how to foster that based only on tariff increase, just because we have to go there. So in a third world country or developing or emerging economy, whatever, you have to have very clear what you're doing with people's money. And what I'm saying is that I worked, just to finish, I worked in a very large project in São Paulo. From Enel, I can say, we were studying how to integrate smart grid and smart meters into the grid. And one of the tasks we had was, what are the benefits, the real benefits that we can take out of it to justify such a project? So as an opening remark, is just saying that we have to take care.
Thank you so much, Rosanna, for bringing a couple of very important points on the realities for emerging markets and developing economies. I think it's something that we'll be hearing from more from the IEA as well, in terms of the 3DEN project that really looks at, the initiative that really looks at this. Maybe to circle back on a few of your points, because we have a bit of time for this as well. Audrey, if I may go back to you. I mean, you've been a policymaker and a regulator. What does digitalization, how do we approach that from a regulatory point of view? And why is this something that consumers should really care about? It's something that we'll like to touch upon later as well.
Certainly, thank you. And really to build on everybody's remarks here, because one of the things that I think is sort of more than fascinating about the energy industry is that regardless of where you are in the world and frankly where your starting point is, the problems are all the same. We are not going to be able to decarbonize our economies, obviously, without electrification. And we're not going to be able to electrify effectively or economically efficiently until we recognize that the power system is a two-way system, and that in order to actually work renewables into the system, we need to have demand itself be the device that responds to generation and actually helps keep generation in balance. So as Laura said, we have to turn the whole thing upside down. We used to think of the grid as simply as generators would increase and decrease based on how we use energy. Now, when we think about electrification, because it's electric vehicles, as well as heating, as well as processing, we need to be able to actually think about how we use digitalization to manage demand, so that itself becomes the most efficient and can follow generation. And to do that then needs markets where consumers are actually compensated by participating in the system. Because what we're doing is essentially moving to a zero marginal cost energy system. And what we want is energy to be a service and for consumers to continue to have universal access to all the energy they need, but actually get paid when they're willing to participate in programs that allow them to modulate their use that doesn't compromise their comfort, but actually provides value back to the system. And the point is, the technology's there. In Australia today, we actually have multiple projects where we're looking at how we integrate distributed energy resources into the grid. In New York, when I was a regulator, we used incentives to basically tell utilities that they could make more money by relying on distributed energy resources than they could by building their own assets. And what we need to do is scale these programs so that they become the norm, rather than a series of demonstrations, just my earlier point. But also, I think to this issue of the economics, we can make the entire transition cheaper by thinking about the role of the consumer as the center and the role of distributed energy resources and smart devices as the primary devices that are going to drive value. And I think to do that then really starts in thinking about a systems challenge, that we need to be thinking about markets in a way that everyone knows the same. If you buy a car, if you buy a smart washing machine or heat pump, it operates the same way universally and gets the same type of value.
Thank you very much, Audrey. Indeed, you bring in this aspect of market creation. I think that's fascinating. That brings us into perhaps a segue towards you, Laura. If I can ask you, you've mentioned this before, and Audrey just did as well. I mean, what does this all mean for the consumer and the end user, bringing into that?
Well, I mean, I think, you know, Audrey, and very, very interesting around the cost to consumers. So the whole decarbonisation mantra for a long time has been, this is going to cost consumers. Actually, if you start to look at the system and you reward consumers for their whole system, not just the electron, but their whole system participation, actually, this is a payback mechanism. Because, I mean, it's quite interesting, isn't it, that the energy sector really doesn't like consumers because they're seen as very random, weird, wacky people, right? And they really do, you know, not engage with consumers. But actually, the physics tells us that demand and supply is equal, right? But when you start to look at, let's say, the subsidy mechanisms, right? Offshore wind gets a contract for difference in the UK, fantastic. If 200,000 heat pumps that could actually optimize the system as much as the supply side, it doesn't get any contract for difference. But actually, heat pumps, and we did some work with BEIS through a project called Recosting Energy. We actually showed that every time you put a heat pump onto the system, you reduce whole system costs. That's of benefit to everybody. But instead, we look at the demand side as a dead weight rather than an active participant. So it's absolutely crucial. But this issue around whole system costs, you talk about metering and then suddenly it appearing on a customer's bill. But if that customer's meter is helping to optimize the system, then it should be the system that pays for the metering. And what we don't seem to understand, because the sector, as Audrey says, is in silos, technology by technology, rather than whole system design, we end up with actually money that is captured in those silos, and it is not flowing through either to the demand side, customers, or actually through those people who are properly optimizing the system. So I personally think, and this might be controversial, is actually other sectors have gone through this already. This isn't new if what we did was get out a lot more and meet new people. And those new people might be, if you look at what happened in the 90s, we went from a mainframe system in data and technology to a PC, mobile, now cloud system, right? In some ways, and I, with my mobile phone, am optimized, I don't have to do it myself, but I am optimized to utilize the data flows in the most effective way. So when I see system operators or energy companies starting to be run by a chief executive from DHL or somebody who has gone through the technology transition or somebody who runs a food company, that will be the day when I know that we are meeting the right people, understanding whole system design.
Thank you very much for changing a perception on demand on the one hand. I think that's a very nice turning that upside down, and to bring analogies into this. I think Audrey and you, Laura, you bring this very clearly in front of us. There is a lot of digital already being applied in other sectors, even on the consumer side. We all are familiar with this, so indeed, in the energy sector, that's an extremely interesting point of view. Maybe, Rina, building on that, in fact, giving the technologies that ISGF has been looking at more in depth, and especially some of the trends that seem to be the increasing use of digital technologies across India to manage energy systems, also from a community level, that there is an increasing role there in terms of making that work and reach scale. Could you comment on that and sort of see how you see the local community playing a role there as well?
Thank you, Anna. India Smart Grid Forum, we have been emphasizing that with the transformation of the power systems that we are seeing towards decentralized power systems, and as Audrey also mentioned, that consumer is going to become key, and we say that consumers is going to be the king. So they need to take an active role and lead the way when it comes to energy transition, and by making lifestyle changes and investing in energy saving commodities. And now, one of the projects, one of the important technology implementation that we have, ISGF has undertaken with the support of the communities and which is peer-to-peer like transaction of solar energy between the peers. So on using a blockchain technology. So this technology has been around and we have seen many use cases in the energy sector, and India Smart Grid Forum, we implemented the very first one with around 16 consumers in the state of Uttar Pradesh, and we again in Delhi with 147 consumers, including consumers with electric vehicles getting integrated, and also more than 1,000 consumers in another state. And this kind of a technology, it allowed the consumers to have their extra energy, the surplus energy, getting traded between their peers, and set a price which currently with the net metering system the regulator has fixed the price, which is maybe 1/3 or 1/4 of the price that they have to pay to buy the electricity. So it's a little unfair to get paid for green energy at a 1/4 rate and buy polluting energy at maybe 4 times the cost. So with blockchain technology playing a key role, and peers getting into smart contracts and be able to fix a price at what I want to buy the green energy and what price I want to sell my surplus. So we showcase this with the pilot that we have undertaken, and the local energy communities have played a key role in the success of this project, and our regulator has already given a groundbreaking regulations around it, which is the first of its kind to implement this project and scale it up at a larger scale in a state like Uttar Pradesh, which has more than 200 million consumers, and which is about 2/3 of overall population of United States, I would say. So another pilot that we have undertaken where local energy communities have played a key role is introduction of time of use tariff. So enabling, with the objective for us to enable the government to frame regulations for moving to real-time pricing of electricity. And again, we went back to Uttar Pradesh to implement the very first one. We have first 50 consumers on board with around 50 megawatt of load. all consumers comprising of industrial, commercial and residential consumers. A real-time price signals is being sent to them on a daily basis. There are 96 blocks in a day, and there are different prices, and at the peak time they are getting penalized, and at using the energy in a non-peak hour, they get the rebate. So with this kind of a project, we have seen that some of our high usage consumers, they have had a huge saving in their monthly energy bills, and that's the kind of market we are looking forward to going forward, with local energy communities supporting the local energy markets creation of be able to manage their energy consumption, and this kind of a new scenario. So it is quite evident that the communities will play a crucial role in providing grid stability with this so much of distributed energy resources getting into play with solar, with batteries, and consumers playing a key role in demand response, helping the utilities reduce the money that they have to spend on managing their peaks, and the upgrades that is required in upgradation of infrastructure to support that kind of demand that they have to cater to. So this kind of market definitely will help the utilities and of course empower the consumers to be able to manage their energy consumption better.
Thank you very much, Rina, for commenting on the role of local communities, how they can help actually become an inherent part of the change that needs to be taking place. I find that extremely striking. Maybe, Rosanna, back to you. If you made such a strong part about the tariff structures, the importance of how we structure tariffs around this type of scale and what digitalization needs to happen. Maybe would you like to comment on some of what has been said already here, and trying to see how we do control these systems costs going forward, ensuring that the business models keep in place?
Yeah, sure. Actually, I start my answer by going back to demand response that you were mentioning. This demand response is actually music to our ears. So if we can do either a demand response that responds as a response to price, which is not dispatchable as a program, or even a program, a demand response program based on paying the customer to be there and to be dispatchable. I don't know if this is an English word, anyhow. And but then, for example, New Zealand is using this kind of arrangement. I didn't know about Australia. I'll look for it. And I see this is one of the wins that we have in the system. It helps control costs because it avoids investment. It's a way of the customer to have the demand engaged in responding and helping the system to lower the cost, because the alternative would be to use thermal energy to stabilize the system, to balance the system, to system balance. So demand response, I think it's one of the most important outcomes of using smart meters, for example. The other thing is distributed energy resources. For example, solar distributed energy. If we do not have a way of having a better structured tariff and a better price signal to the ones injecting money into the grid, maybe we will be ending up doing a cross-subsidy between the low income, well, actually it's a Robin Hood cross-subsidy between the ones that do not have solar panel towards the ones who do have solar panels. So a solar meter in a better tariff structure help a lot, and we can go there easier if we do have smart meters all over. It's not the only way, but it helps. On the other hand, on the system operation side, we do have better operational efficiency if we have a better a digitalized grid. Meaning, for example, if you do have a 3D 3D model of your grid, so you can optimize trucks that go to cut a tree if the tree is touching the grid. You can anticipate a lot of things. So you better the quality of supply without doing a lot of investment if you do it smartly. So it's just some thoughts here, how you can help it.
Audrey, would you like to comment?
Yes, I'd like to add to both of these comments. I think that when you, around the world, you'll hear distribution utilities raise concerns about like EVs and electrification as increasing peaks. But the fact of the matter is, and that's what we're saying, if we create this digital network, and Laura and I are been talking a lot about creating a digital spine that could be sort of globally in nature, wherein in fact EVs as well as electric heat pumps as well as solar become assets on the system, and that therefore at the distribution level you're able then to manage so that you're not increasing the peak of the system, but instead using these assets to manage the system most efficiently. And as we get back to then having customers really be compensated for that. If we do that piece, plus add the dimension that we want to electrify everyone, so we need to put our programs in place so that there is no one left behind. Just like we want universal access to electricity, we want universal access to DER and electrification. And we need to start thinking about these as programs, because we go back to, for example, to this cellular industry. We didn't just do fiber to the home in response to whoever could afford it. We said the entire network had to be rewired to provide access. And we need to do the same thing on the electricity side so we can do it most efficiently and in a planned way. And I think if we start thinking about that in terms of compensation, electrification, and the fact that these distributed resources, if we have the right digital networks, can be used both as a means to support access to electrification globally, but also reduce the cost of the transition. We start realizing, and I love the way the UK, and I think, Laura, you're responsible for it, that customers shouldn't be seen, and their assets shouldn't be a pariah on the system, but an asset in of itself. And I think that's where these kind of conversations need to be going, and where we should be taking this now is to start thinking about, well, what are these core technologies that need to be developed, including smart metering, which I think should be first off the rank, so that we can move as quickly as we can.
Very briefly, unfortunately, it seems like our discussion is so interesting, we're getting caught off with time. We have to close in terms of our timing now, but if you want to bring in just really briefly,
quickly,
yes.
Is countries with developed grids are going to have to retrofit them for digital. Those countries without extensive grid networks actually have a real opportunity to leapfrog the way we've designed our grids. And I would urge you guys here today to actually really start to design the grid of the future, not the retrofitted one, and certainly don't start developing grids that look like ours, because actually that's not necessarily the right solution.
Great. Thank you so much to our speakers for these excellent points. Thank you for the applause. It's absolutely well deserved for helping us navigate this complexity. I thank you.
Thank you.
So it's now time to move into a central part of our event today, which looks at some of the key highlights of the 3DEN initiative, and more particularly looks at the launch of its first flagship publication. And without further ado, I'd like to invite our next speakers to join here on stage. Ms. Anna Lidia Pansini, who's a senior advisor from the Ministry of Environment and Energy Security of Italy. Please, Ms. Pansini, join us here on stage. And also, of course, Ms. Vida Rosite, 3DEN program lead at the IEA, to join us here. And please give them a round of applause. Thank you. We will now be hearing a few key highlights of the 3DEN initiative, all that has been achieved so far and what it has stood for, how this is going around. And I'd love to hand over the floor here to Ms. Pansini to give her remarks.
Thank you, Anna, for this introduction, and I'm very pleased to be here representing today my ministry, and let me thank again IEA for having organized this meeting that gives us the opportunity to share with all of you the state of the art of our joint initiative 3DN project. 3 years ago we decided as Italian government to finance this project, being confident about the added value and important role would play the digital technologies and digitalization for the decarbonization of the energy system, energy affordability, and energy security. All these issues, also considering the historical moment we are living in, are becoming more and more important. So we were not wrong, and we are facing many challenges on different fronts, like for example, last year we had an important energy crisis that have an impact on economies all around the world. The adverse effect of climate change on power system is a matter of fact, and also and this clearly is creating, I mean, big problem for. And at the center of these challenges, there is the power system, and in particular the grid. For this reason, we decided to finance 3DN, which the main objective is to provide. Okay, thank you. Because I have a presentation, but I don't know how to. That doesn't work. Okay. The big one, this one. Okay. The aim of the project is provide I don't know. Okay, is provide the policymaker of the beneficiary countries with, very practical and operational guidance on 3 main pillars: regulatory pillar, technologies, and financial pillars, in order to try to accelerate the decarbonization, the modernization of the power system, in order also to promote an effective and efficient utilization of distributed energy sources and demand-side resources through digitalization. We start in 2020, and the first phase of the project will be finalized by the end of 2023, the beginning of 2024. The global, the scope of the 3DN initiative is global, but at least for the first phase, we decided in any case to focus on some countries. So we decided to focus on Latin America, Africa, and Southeast Asia region. Why digitalization? As I said before, open opportunity on the energy system as a whole. So we have a lot of technologies such as advanced simulation, digital twins, big data that can have an impact not just on power system, but for example other sectors such as transport and building that, as you know, are have a big impact in terms of emission of greenhouse gases. And this can create clearly and can have many benefits, such as decarbonization, can have a reduction of operative costs, can promote the reliability and the resilience of the system. When we decide to launch 3DN, sorry, but okay.
one of the main objective of our idea was to try to promote an hub of knowledge and insight. And we have done this through also the governance. We create clearly a joint committee that normally is manage, give strategic guidance and overseen the implementation of the project. But besides the joint committee, we decided to create a consultative group. The consultative group advise our project on technical issue, they provide input on project result, they support the implementation of the pilot during the project phase. It was established since the beginning, consists on 7 stakeholders from 14 countries, representing academia, university, multilateral agency, international financial institution. So as an important added value, because create a community of practice, also on sector that normally are used to treat it in a separated way, and this is very important for our initiative. The activities that we have financed until now are main. The first one is clearly dissemination. So 3DN organized or participated in more than 60 webinars, a lot of workshops, and we have an interaction with all those stakeholders that are involved in the energy sector, like private sector, regional organization, industry association, startups. Then we elaborate policy guidance to be provided to the policymakers. So 3DN, first of all, contributed to more than 35 publications, but the main result, the main output of our project are 2 reports. The first one will be presented from VIDA, and the second report will be issued on November 2023. And finally, we decided to, together with IEA and UNEP and Mr. Radka at the beginning of this event, a presentation on this, we decided to have a call with the UNEP, a call for proposal, in order to test on the ground, to collect from the beneficiary countries also some input and insight on the digitalization items. So we promote a call in Brazil, Colombia, Morocco, Tunisia, India, Indonesia and South Africa, and at the end we finance 5 pilot projects. All we know that in order to reach the ambitious target that we decided all together in the framework of Paris Agreement, we clearly need the international cooperation, to promote international cooperation. International collaboration has a catalytic role in order to promote the modernization of the power system. So we need to stimulate public-private partnership. We need to establish knowledge sharing platform. And so, what we would like to have as Italian government is to have further countries, further organizations to join our initiative in order to participate in an active way for the development of new analysis, new tools, engagement in capacity building, in training. So my wish today, my invitation is to join us and come on board. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Anna Lydia, and I'll reiterate what Dr. Motherway said, that we greatly value the collaboration with the Italian government and with our partner UNEP. This is a unique project for the IEA, which meshes insights from on the ground, analysis, and continuously delivers new policy insights. So it's my pleasure here today to tell you a bit more about our report, but let me first reiterate that this year is a big year for grids at the IEA, and we're extremely pleased that finally grids will get the spotlight that they need. We heard already in the previous panels how absolutely crucial power systems are for the clean energy transition. We heard concerns that if investments in digitalization aren't made, if modernization does not happen, then we will have outages. We will have inefficiencies. Consumers will have to pay more. And so this is our first report. It's available today online, first page of the IEA. Please have a look. Please share with friends. And so this, I'll tell you a bit more about what's inside the report, but before that, then already in October, we will have the IEA special reports on grids, which will be a global stocktake of where are we at, what is happening, where are we with investments, where do we need more investments, how do we move forward towards the grids that we need. And then come November, as Anna Lydia mentioned, our second 3-den report, zooming into grids of the future and touching upon many of the topics that our esteemed panel earlier also mentioned. I'm building suspense before opening the report for you. Okay. We already heard today about power systems facing challenges, and we're facing both immediate challenges today, but we're also facing new challenges in the future. And as our decarbonization journey progresses, we will face even challenges that we may not have anticipated in the future. Just to highlight a few of these. So in terms of what's at stake. So as we said, electricity systems at the heart of clean energy transitions. Electricity demand, especially in emerging and developing economies, is set to increase, and increase by a staggering amount, to 2,600 terawatt hours in just 7 years. This is massive. This is as much as the demand of 5 Germanys in 7 years. To compound things, we're seeing a big increase in the need of cooling. I think we're noticing here, this is a hot room. We are all thinking about cooling, but increasingly, due to climate change, cooling is a life or death situation. And we see that demand is already reaching as much as 30% of peak load in some countries, and the number of air conditioners to be deployed is set to double again in just 7 years. And a large share of these, of course, in emerging and developing countries. And to make the challenge even more complex, we still have more than 775 million people without electricity access. And we were seeing, after years of progress, negative trends. Last year, 20 million people lost access because they couldn't afford to pay for electricity. And of course, power systems are already being affected by climate change, with damage to assets and outages on a monthly basis. Outages and unreliable supply, particularly a painful issue for emerging and developing countries, where some countries face outages for hours every day. And unreliable supplies affecting economies, forcing businesses to purchase expensive diesel generators and spend a lot of money on fuel. We've been calculating at the IEA, we love our numbers, and we've estimated that unreliable supply and outages could cost 1.3 trillion just over the next 7 years, unless something urgently is done to fix this. We see technical losses alone in power systems are costing in the region of up to 100 billion per year globally. So on this backdrop, we need to decarbonize, and we need to decarbonize really, really fast. And IEA came out this week with really good news. So investments in renewables finally surpassed investments in oil. But if you read the fine print of that report, that's the midterm renewable market report, We are emphasizing that grids need to be strengthened, they need to be modernized to enable continued deployment of renewables and, importantly, effective and efficient use of these renewables. So we already heard power systems are changing, they need to change. I think they needed to be turned upside down and change completely. And what we do need here is to think about what are the capabilities that we need, the new functionalities that we need. And here we already heard today, we cannot have these new power systems that are infinitely more complex, that need whole system orchestration, that need visibility in our analog way. Our power systems were designed for times when we had readily available, subsidized fossil fuel resources and where we did not pay heed to any consequences. The consequences are here now. We are on the verge of climate disaster. Change needs to happen urgently. So what role can digitalization play? And I think one of the reasons why digitalization in the power sector hasn't taken off at the speed that it needs to is the complexity. It's perceived as complex. So what we've done in this report, we've broken it down into functionalities. What are the things that we want these digital tools to deliver? We want to improve the performance of current grids now. We want to improve access and affordability. We want to start managing demand growth and electrification. We need to prepare for the future, including resilience, management of distributed energy resources, advanced energy system planning, and we need to start leveraging data, and we need to start building data governance systems and frameworks, because even now, with digitalization being, I'd say, partially deployed, there are huge data resources that are sitting and not being used for analysis, for insights, for energy planning. So this is a similar slide that you saw from Anna Lydia, but just to re-emphasize, because we are at an energy efficiency conference, many of you are energy efficiency policy makers or advisors to energy efficiency policy makers, so we're very much focusing on expanding the scale and scope of efficiency, because we cannot just continue looking at end uses, we cannot continue working in our silos. We need to think about how can we leverage energy efficiency more actively at the time it's needed, in the place it's needed. So a much more dynamic role for efficiency, and we heard already about the importance of demand response going forward. And just to mention, in terms of policies, it was already discussed today that everyone has a role to play. And energy efficiency policymakers have a strong role to play in this area to ensure that the equipment that is being deployed is grid ready, that buildings are interactive, that we have the regulations that are being leveraged to provide this flexibility. We heard about a frightening amount of flexibility needed in India, and it's the same world over. We will need much more of it, and we will need to find out how to leverage things. So we do need more integrated policy making. We do, I think, we heard about people needing to talk to the right people. In the energy sector, we need to start talking across our silos to create the solutions that we need. And here, just to emphasize, here's one of our load curves, and this is a situation that we'll increasingly be facing as we decarbonize. We're seeing generation at a time when we don't have supply, or we don't have demand, and then we all come home in the evenings, we'll plug in our electric vehicles, our tea kettles, start cooking, and we'll see a peak, and we don't have the supply to match that. While with smart solutions, we can modify these curves, we can find ways where we can utilize storage effectively, and we can contribute to more secure, more stable, more reliable, cheaper electricity going into the future, and maxing out the value of renewable energy, because what we're seeing today is that we could avoid curtailing 25% of renewable energy by leveraging smart demand response. 25% we are wasting. So investments, as Anna Lydia said, investments is a strong pillar of our joint work, and we're not seeing a good situation. We need globally investments to double over every year over the next 7 years, and looking into the future, that increase is continuing. We're seeing negative trends, especially in emerging and developing countries, where rather than increasing, investments in grids are decreasing. They're decreasing at a time when grids need to be strengthened. They need to be modernized. We need to be able to provide access to people, reliable electricity to people, so that they can grow their businesses, so that they can develop, so that they can attend education. So definitely need for strong focus in this space. And in our report, we provide policy guidance around how to drive investments, how to enable investments, how to leverage different types of mechanisms and vehicles. And we provide a broad spectrum of policy guidance around a range of different areas worth considering when you're embarking on a smart grid journey, or you're already well along in your smart grid journey. There's continuously things to look at and think about and consider. But I'll end my presentation with our 5 steps to start the smart grid journey, to start thinking about, before embarking, what do we need? We need a vision, we need roadmaps, we need roles for people. We need to consider involving people who haven't been involved in the power system, and finding new ways of collaborating. We need to think about our priorities. We need to understand the impact of technologies, understand the cost benefits. That's something we heard earlier today, and we need new methodologies to do that. We do not have the methodologies today to be able to assess the full spectrum of environmental and social benefits that digitalization could unlock in the context of power systems, and so our investments are not going in the right direction. Collaboration, data, finding ways of sharing data, making effective use of data, and of course transparency, communication of what is happening, what are the roles, what are we achieving, is an essential part of this smart grid journey. So with that, I'll end my presentation. I'll thank you all very much for your patience. I think Anna will tell us about networking opportunity, and please do have a look at our report. Please do share it, and please do keep in mind that a new report is coming already October, the stocktake, and then Grids of the Future. And for Grids of the Future, I would very much welcome yourselves here in the audience, people online, to reach out to us at 3DEN and share your perspectives and share your views, so that we can take best practices, innovative approaches, exciting new perspectives into developing this report, because we're calling it Grids of the Future, but it is very much about the actions that need to happen today, so that we don't miss the opportunities, so that we don't close doors, but we get to the place where we need to get. Thank you very much for your attention. And I'll hand over to Anna.
Thank you very much, Vida, and thank you very much, Ms. Pansini, for this really stellar part of today, to really launch this report, underline what 3DEN is all about, and indeed to end on Vida's note here. It's very important that we take into account any questions, any comments, any suggestions that, based on what you've just heard, whether from the floor here, whether from the audience here in Versailles or online, please do make sure that they reach the IEA. The email is up here on screen, and this is very important to the team and to the work that is ongoing and that continues. So in that respect, I'm very happy to now announce a brief networking opportunity, time for a bit of coffee, to build on what has been said, and to also anticipate what will come after, because we have 2 more very important discussions to build on all of these aspects. So we'll reconvene in the next 20 minutes. Thank you very much. welcome back to the live stream as well. We're resuming the second part, in fact, of today's special event. I went through quickly. What we'd like to do in this second segment is really build on what we've done prior to this. So we know that power system transformation is absolutely vital for our energy transition. Digitalization is a way to get there. We've heard that from our opening remarks. We've heard the vast work that 3Den is doing on this. We've also heard from our changemaker conversation what are some of the immediate challenges, some of the big puzzle pieces that need to be addressed. And then we've heard from the 3Den initiative, the flagship report that is out now, what can be done about this, why it's so important. So perhaps now it's a good moment to really be looking at what digitalization looks like more concretely in emerging markets and developing economies. And that's what our next segment is going to be about. And to set the scene here, it's my pleasure to invite Ms. Alessandra Fidanza, who is a senior expert at the Ministry of Environment and Energy Security, to give a keynote address in this respect. So, Ms. Fidanza, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Anna. Thank you very much, distinguished delegates, guests, offline and online. I'm delighted to be with you today to address the importance of scaling up the implementation of digital technologies to support access to clean and affordable electricity, and to introduce a discussion about the vital role of smart grid pilot projects. Digital technologies can provide significant benefits for climate and power systems reliance. We are pleased that the 3Den initiative has become a flagship project to support the energy transition. And let me add that an added value of this project is the fruitful cooperation between the IEA and UNEP. The focus of today's event is threefold. First, we aimed to convene diverse and insightful expert discussions. The room here today in Versailles is a direct testimony to that. Second, we aimed to launch the first 3Den flagship report, and I've just heard key highlights presented by the IEA. Let me address our appreciation for the IEA's remarkable work. This report reflects on smart grid opportunities in emerging and developing economies, how digitalization can tackle multiple challenges, and most importantly, the vast benefits it can bring to emerging and developing economies. But today is also about a third objective, to illustrate how change is already taking place. Within the 3Den project, the Italian Ministry of Environment and Energy Security launched a smart grid pilot program managed by the United Nations Environment Programme, UNEP. Projects are currently being implemented in Brazil, Colombia, India, and Morocco. The achievements and learnings from these projects will be used to inform further IEA analysis and policy guidance. In line with 3Den's objectives, the pilot projects focus on digitalization for flexible and resilient energy systems in emerging and developing economies. Each pilot showcases innovative applications of smarter digital power infrastructures update. In doing so, the pilot projects provide an opportunity to gain on-the-ground insights, test new approaches, and disseminate learning that fits into the 3Den initiative. Insights gained from the pilot projects will help scale up the implementation of efficient, reliable, and sustainable energy systems, impacting people's lives across the continents. As we heard during the report launch, digital technologies help address current challenges power systems are facing worldwide. Digital technologies can improve system efficiency, resilience, flexibility, and quality of electricity, enhance energy access, and enable affordability, thereby improving livelihoods. Moreover, digital technologies enable decarbonizing power systems to deliver a net zero future. Italy is firmly committed to modernizing energy efficiency and power system as a part of the overall European goal to reduce emissions of at least 55% by 2030 and reach climate neutrality by 2050, as the European Green Deal set out. This commitment underpins our leading role in the 3DN initiative. Since the inception of 3DN, Italy has aimed to complement the analytical and policy work with supporting concrete digitalization solutions to take off in emerging and developing economies. Not only did we intend for the initiative to provide insights, analysis, and recommendations for policy action, but we also wanted to enable tangible, visible, and measurable change. The pilot projects reflect this, and I'm glad to announce that representatives from each pilot project are with us today. And we will have the opportunity to hear from them in the forthcoming discussion. We thank UNEP for their fantastic work and capillary support to allow the pilots to operate. The pilot projects are proving these benefits are real. They reflect innovative solutions in urban smart energy, islanded systems, and existing asset enhancement. Mrs. Marian Elermenissi, Mrs. Viviana Vitto, Mr. Daniele Russolillo, Mr. Pankaj Argvaval, who are with us today, will speak to these examples. These pilots have in common that they help us better understand what is happening on the ground, which is fundamental in spearheading the change at the scale and scope needed for decarbonization. Daniele Russolillo speaks to the work of digital districts for flexible energy services by Planet Smart City, and in which way the company is transforming how affordable housing is delivered in Brazil. Mariam Elmernissi represents the work of Les Eaux Minérales d'Ulm in Morocco, making progress on changing global energy systems in food and drink processing companies by implementing digital measurements and energy monitoring systems to improve industrial energy efficiency, thereby facilitating power system decarbonization. Pankaj Agarwal leads the work at Panitech on a cloud-based digital twin technology to an electrical distribution grid to deliver enhanced operation and management and improve the reliability and cost efficiency of an emergency economy distribution network in Delhi, India. Viviana Vitto will illustrate how Enelflex provides digital demand response mechanisms that are already improving power system efficiency in Colombia. Moreover, she will provide insights into the need for power systems to evolve to meet the future needs. This discussion will help shed light on how pilots can be taken to the next level and go from demonstration to reach scale. We will also hear about the critical role of startups and technology providers in ensuring access to solutions and the capacity to utilize them for maximum value. We know we must scale rapidly to reach our decarbonization goals, and digitalization is a way to get there. The panel will also host Dr. Shivani Sharma from Hitachi Energy in India. Hitachi is in the 3DN consultative group, who will speak about some of the challenges in the context of India and highlight the critical role of technology development to support the clean energy transition. And Mr. David Darinze from DDI, a not-for-profit development service provider in Nigeria, who will speak about some of the challenges in the context of Africa in deploying innovative technologies and solutions and highlight some success factors. I look forward to hearing from the panel. Italy thanks UNEP and the IEA for their support in making the 3DN project a successful initiative, enabling our ministry's vision to be realized with tangible, visible, and quantifiable outputs and achievements. As my colleague Anna Lydia mentioned, we welcome further countries to join us on this vital journey towards digitally enabled, clean, affordable and efficient power systems. I look forward to this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Fidanza, for laying out the key objectives of this event, in fact, gathering the discussions, launching the report, and of course, discussing these pilot projects that we're very eager to hear more about. And in that respect, I'd love to segue into our panel discussion. So my pleasure to invite our speakers to join us here on stage, Mr. Daniele Russolillo, Mr. Pankaj Agarwal, Ms. Miriam El-Mernissi, Mr. David Arinze, Ms. Shivana Sharma, and Ms. Viviana Vito. Please join us with a round of applause. Thank you. So, thank you very much for being here. In this second discussion, building from the broad picture, we'd now like to really get a better sense of what digitalization looks like on the ground, and I think that the speakers of this panel really can speak to that very, very accurately. We've just heard that the benefits of the pilot projects, that what they're trying to achieve are real, that they're being taken forward, and would love to hear more of your perspective on exactly what is happening in this space. And maybe if I can start with you, Daniele. You are COO and Deputy CEO of Planet Smart City, an expert on energy environment in the urban settings, working across multiple continents, Asia, Africa, Europe. And you represent one of the pilots, in fact, on digital districts for flexible energy services. Can I ask you, within the space that you're operating, can you highlight some of the challenges that Planet Smart City is trying to overcome in Brazil?
Thank you so much, Anna. Thank you, everybody. I also say hello to all the people who are watching us remotely. This is a great day for us because we won the 3DN initiative, and I need to thank IEA and the Italian ministry. That was a very visionary action to put in place. And of course, I need to thank also the UNEP delegation, Miriam and Carolina, who made everything happen. I mean, UNEP came to visit our development to ensure that due diligence was doing right, and then we won. This is a young company. Planet Smart City was born in 2018, well, actually a bit before, but we started the scale up in 2018, and it's been a fast ride. We are a real estate developer with a twist. What do we do? It's important to understand. We develop large neighborhoods for affordable housing in countries characterized by high level of housing deficit. We build homes, thousands of homes, for lower income people. India is the first country for us in terms of top line. Brazil is the second country, and we were born in Brazil. This is why this project has been delivered there, because we are more advanced there. We just started up Colombia, and we have presence also as the headquarters in Italy, UK, and we have projects in the United States. It's very important to understand the challenges, and I was talking about challenges. Let me give you a very short picture. In the world, every single year, 10 million apartments are built for the affordable housing sector. What is it? These are apartments for the lower income segments of the society. Usually people are first buyers. We usually used to live in informal settlements, or many families in one apartment, or in one apartment but very unsafe housing. And they want a place to live. Affordable housing, 10 million sectors, 10 million homes every year produced. You know what will be the demand of affordable apartments in 2025? 350 million households are going to look for what the United Nations called decent housing. The gap between the supply and the demand is staggering. What happens in this sector is that real estate developers operate locally. And very often, if you travel with countries characterized by high level of housing deficit, Brazil tops 8.5 million housing units. Rural India and urban India tops 80 million housing units as housing deficit. So we're talking about an enormous problem. If you travel to these places, you won't see very often beautiful projects. You don't want to raise your kids there. Projects that lack master planning, there's no vision, there's no design, there's no quality of construction, let alone what Audrey wants us to go first, which is digitization. We want to do things differently. I mean, Miriam has been in our developments in Brazil. We sell homes to families in Brazil for a Minha Casa Minha Vida program, and I want to say this is all a private venture. We don't ask any money from the public environment. But our families are happy because our projects are actually beautiful, and we look after ESG compliance and, of course, innovations. The challenges are that when you build their homes for less than $300 per square meter, it's complicated to go into this stream of innovation and to decarbonize properly and to go for resilience. But there's one little trick that we apply, which is scale. If you apply scale, so you're not building little condominiums, I don't know, 20, 30 apartments, but you go for hundreds and hundreds and thousands, then with a scale and a proper business plan, you can integrate innovation. So our idea in Brazil with this winning project was that we want to digitize the local energy system. Of course, we're going to go downstream the smart meter. Of course, we're going to put IoT in the system. Of course, we're going to do PV systems in a distributed way. Of course, we're going to do storage. The platform for managing all the power flow at the local level is proprietary from Planet and our partner Energy of Things, which is a company in Italy. We are going to do that, but the first, for which I'm so happy to be on this stage, is that it will happen for the first time in the world in an affordable housing development, where in this moment 300 families live, almost 500 in a little while, and these are families whose income every month is around $500 a month. Do you understand the power, the evocative power on these families, on the kids who live there, to stay in a development with such an advanced, innovative technologies to decarbonize, save money on the bills, and decongestion the power network, which means reliability, which means improving the quality of life every day.
Thank you, Daniele, to really illustrate so well the people factor here, because that is, like Brian said this morning, really an important
action,
in fact, and an angle to keep in mind, keep top of mind, in fact, and I think we'll circle back to that also, your point on scale, because I think that's also one of the things that I'm guessing many of you have in common. Pankaj, if I can turn to you now. You're CEO of India-based Panitech Power Group. You're working on accelerating India's transition to net zero with state-of-the-art technologies, and in particular working here on cloud-based digital twin technology for electrical distribution grids. Can you speak to us? I guess same question as to Daniele, so same passion in the answer. Could you tell us a bit what are some of the challenges you're trying to to really help resolve, and how your technology is helping within that?
Thanks, Anna, and thank you everybody for being there. Thank you for the invitation. I'm really, really grateful, of course, to IEA, UNEP, and particularly Ministry of Italian Ministry of Power for supporting this work. What I thought was that pictures speak much, much more than 1,000 words. So I thought I'll share a couple of pictures in this presentation. What you see is actually very fresh pictures from last week. I was in Delhi last week, where we are deploying this solution we talked about. In India, we talked about, of course, in the panels before, we talked about technical, non-technical, commercial losses, and this is what it looks like. This is how it's a real life, a complex situation. And if you're trying to reduce these losses in this environment, how do we go about doing it? Mix into all this the transition that's happening with distributed energy coming in, with electrical vehicles coming in. This is a complex problem. The whole nature of electricity is changing. The approach that we are taking, therefore, is to create a digital twin. what it does, and I'll talk to you about, we will show some things about this, is essentially we've installed, and what you again see are, this is we are at a very early stage of the project. We just deployed state-of-the-art meters and data collection devices to collect complex set of data in this complex environment, and to demonstrate also the complexity and the problem of the system here. And our approach we are taking is that, in India is very interesting compared to the Western world. I always like to use the example of mobile telephony. 30 years ago, we leapfrogged from a very, very poor telephone network to one of the most advanced mobile network. And India has the same potential when it comes to the transformation that's happening in the electric sector. If you look at advanced countries, European countries, they have good legacy systems. So the meters there are old rotating type meters. In India, we are now leapfrogging. The government is planning to install in every house in the next 5 years smart digital meters. That means there'll be 250 million smart meters in the next 5-6 years, which means the kind of data that can be collected can be used now to completely transform the way energy is distributed, is consumed, and we can show the world. So that's the message, that's what we are trying to do. We are at a very, very early stage of this project. We have chosen one of the most complex sites because what we want to make is, something which is scalable. And finally, we are a company, a for-profit company. Our idea is not just to have another pilot. The idea is really use this learning to scale it up, not only in Delhi, but India and also hopefully across the world.
I thank you for this, Pankaj, because I see a similar, very nice bridge with what Daniele was saying. Huge potential, markets that are absolutely tremendous, and technologies that are now proving what they can do. I understand it's early days, but still it seems that this is heading into the right direction, and that scale will be the next question. I'd like to circle back to that in just a bit, in fact. So thank you for also the examples that really do make this very, very clear. If I can turn to you now, Meriam El Mernisi. You're a productivity and go-to-market director at Les Eaux Minérales d'Oulmès. You have extensive experience in increasing energy efficiency from an industrial perspective, but also from a measurement perspective. And I think that speaks to some of the work that you're doing at Les Eaux Minérales d'Oulmès. Can you speak to the massive role that energy efficiency in industry can really help deliver in this respect?
Okay, thank you, Anna. I'm pleased to be here today to share with all of you our experience, the experience of Les Eaux Minérales d'Oulmès in terms of energy efficiency, digitalizing, and give some few insights on the project. This project, for which I would like to thank the Italian Ministry of Environment and Energy Security, the United Nations Environment Programme, and the International Energy Agency for making it happen, and for helping accelerating our energy efficiency roadmap in such a transformative way. Now, coming back to your question, Anna, the project is digitalization of energy management and industrial performance monitoring systems. It's a focus, it's a special focus on data management, because we know that data management is crucial to achieve efficient usage of energy, especially in large-scale facilities like Les Eaux Minérales d'Oulmès. So the project consists of, in a very first step, of enhancing our measurement system by using smart devices and instruments, and it is being implemented in our two main factories in Morocco, totalizing over 80% of our production industry. So these measurements, or these data is automatically collected and integrated into two digital platforms, the digital solutions that we have been choosing in this project. First one is called Power Studio SCADA, and it is dedicated for energy management combined with the second solution, which is LineView for industrial performance management. So both platforms, or both digital platforms, provide predictive analytics. These analytics are based on artificial intelligence and machine learning, and they provide forecasts on supply and demand and consumption patterns. And we all know that when we take like data in like an isolated way, it cannot be used in an efficient way. So that's why the predictive models that we are working on currently, they combine other factors linked to the activity, specific factors linked to the activity, like production schedule, like machine capabilities, like quality of power, maintenance plannings, in order to give a global picture and valuable insights. And these insights are used by the stakeholders, the top management level, in order to identify where do we have losses, where we can implement our action plans in order to get immediate optimization effects or impact, and also in order to take effective informed decisions about capacity increase, about continuous improvement project, and other investment that are linked to cost reduction. And in terms of, well, impacts, we are talking about productivity impact, efficiency, but in numbers, if I can translate this in the numbers, this project will allow us to reach energy consumption reduction of 20%, which will lead to reduction of carbon footprint of 15%.
Well, some very striking numbers there. From what I recall here, you know, predictive analytics, data, machine learning, I think this really builds up very nicely with some of the big concepts that were mentioned earlier this afternoon. And what that goes to show, I think it mentions what you can't change, what you can't measure, right? So
exactly, we cannot improve what we cannot measure. We cannot change it. Exactly.
So that's the ideal way to go on that, indeed. Maybe if I can turn to you now, David. You're a program officer for off-grid at Diamond Development Initiatives. You accompany and really support many successful clean energy off-grids into their next stages. You do this throughout West Africa, and you're an advisor to UNDP Energy. You're part of the SDG 7 youth constituency as well. So you bring an interesting angle to this debate as well, which is to look at this from a startups, innovative business models perspective, and also from the African continent perspective, where there are many specific challenges, but also so much potential ahead. So can you speak to us a little bit in terms of how you see these new technologies solve perhaps the biggest challenge of them all, the energy access challenge?
Warm greetings, everyone. Such a pleasure to be here. I would say thank you for the question, Anna, and as I think around the different facets the question presents, in Africa today we have over 500 million people without access to energy. When we want to look at the subject of, on the perspective of electricity, when we look at the subject of clean cooking, it's even scarier. And as we think around the challenges that this presents, it also creates a very brilliant opportunity, you know, for businesses to take advantage of. In Nigeria today, we have supported the implementation of several multiple projects across different value chains, from mini-grid solutions to standalone solutions to clean cooking and even solar equipment manufacturing. And one of the things that we have seen that has been a game changer and that could also inform funders and how they spend is being able to ensure that they create platforms like Triden and other platforms that ensure that companies can turn their idea to product. And when you're trying to answer this energy challenge, you need to look at the fact that you have a business to deal with, and it must make sense to the financier. Energy is a business. And while it has a socioeconomic impact, we need to be able to look at it from their perspective. And sometimes that's where the role of different financiers and different types of financing come into place. There'll be those who would fund idea to product. There'll be those who will be able to fund that idea that has turned to product to go through multiple levels of iteration. There'll be those who would fund that formidable product that have gone through those levels of iteration to go to scale and ensure you grow these businesses. Across board, there's a level of hand-holding that needs to be provided, support that needs to be given to all of these companies. And the kind of support that we're giving to category A would differ from the type of support that we're giving to category C. In all of this, we have seen the tremendous impact that can happen when indigenous companies are being supported to provide indigenous solutions to a very complex problem as energy access. In Nigeria today, we funded the only solar manufacturing plant, a private-led manufacturing company who manufactures solar PVs in Nigeria. We have tremendous successes as well with mini-grid companies and the rest of them. What makes the difference? We must be willing to walk the long haul with these companies. We must be able to also gather data. And why am I really very passionate about clean energy businesses and startups running this sort of, trying to provide this sort of solution? Because they understand the market. They understand the people. Why are we trying to even solve an energy access challenge? Because it has a direct correlation towards taking people out of poverty. And so we look at it from that perspective, and we're not just trying to explore another technology today or show a fancy idea today. No, we have a critical problem to address, and that is energy poverty and how it impacts on people's socioeconomic growth and activities. And so when we look at all of this, that influences the kind of work that we do. And of course, youths have a critical role to play. Over 70% of the companies that we fund today are youth-led. And so we have seen tremendous ideas, impactful solutions that youth can bring on board. And so I would like to call, we already have some of these innovative ideas on stream, we already have them available, but I would like to call the attention to relevant state governments, relevant country governments, relevant partners, funding organizations as well, to look at how do we fund clean businesses? Do we need to revise the kind of mechanisms that we have today to be able to ensure that we have the emergence of much more companies who can play in this sector? I'll pause it here, Anna.
Thank you, David. You seem to really illustrate where technologies, development, and entrepreneurship meet. And I think there's probably few areas that are so exciting for that space than Africa, in fact, than sub-Saharan Africa. I really think, the hand-holding, all the work that you're doing in that space there's a lot going on there to take forward. Maybe, Shivana, if I can turn to you at this stage. You're a principal technical consultant at Hitachi Energy. In India, you bring 16 years of experience within smart grid sector and industry in particular. And I'd like to hear maybe from you, what technologies and solutions exist today to be able to decarbonize and digitalize the grid, also from India's perspective, which a lot we've heard about already.
All right. Thanks a lot, Anna, and thank you, Vida, and the complete IEA team for inviting me here. I represent Hitachi Energy, and we are pioneer leaders into technology solutions and power consulting as well, where we do different kind of power system analysis to integrate all these new kind of technologies that we talk in. And as my friend Vida, she just told in the morning, right, for all of us who are feeling uncomfortable sitting in this room here, As a parent and as a professional, I was really very concerned when the last year in India, we did see a cold wave, we did see a heat wave, and there was a situation where my daughter's school went online due to a bad air quality index. So, you know, climate change is not something that we are talking, oh, it will come 10 years later or something. It is just right here on our face, and that's how, you know, I'm so happy we are all the important stakeholders. We are here to solve these challenges. And also, as you mentioned from the India's perspective, I would really like to say that the kind of demography that we have, the kind of, you know, strong renewable availability that we have in our area, we are talking of 500 gigawatt in the next couple of years, which is a very, very huge renewable that we are talking about. There's also an ongoing debate, like should you, completely replace the coal-powered power plants and move to renewables and so on. So that's where it's very important that when we say yes decarbonization, when we say yes more renewable, we would also like to see that what are the kind of implications that these resources would bring into the grid. And as a consumer, I may really not be concerned whether you use a microgrid, a solar or a coal. The ultimate point is that we are trying to solve a dilemma of energy where we are also trying to add clean energy. We are also trying to make it secure. Yes, it has to be reliable, as well as we are also trying to make it affordable where it's very economical for the consumer to use it. And as we discussed the people factor in the first half, I would like to take it a little ahead where we have a onus, an important responsibility, not today, but for the generations to come, that whatever actions we are doing, we do not come back to zero, and we plan it in such a way that it's a very optimal kind of energy mix, it's a very optimal kind of implementation in a phased manner that we are going ahead with. And coming to the industry readiness, so we all talk of decarbonization, of resilience, of energy efficiency. It's very important again to understand that today we are at a stage where organizations are no more about just profit and loss. We are also committed to the carbon emissions. Yes, the step one, a dipstick assessment. What is the kind of carbon emissions that your organization is making? So you could be a factory, you could just be an office, you could be an academic institute, but let's measure what is that emission that you make and how do you reduce it. And while we sit here in Versailles talking of all these decarbonization activities, it's also important to understand that electricity is going to be the backbone of the complete energy sector. So do we really have those products which are readily available for us to implement? So yes, there are many, including one of my organizations, there are many products available. So just to give you a very brief glimpse, SF6 is a gas which is like, the monster, or I would say a very harmful for the environment. So there are SF6 products available in the market. There are development stage activities that we are doing. So for example, we would say more renewables, replace all the diesel generators, right? There's this ongoing trend going on, kill the DGs. So when we say this, we replace it with a sustainable solution, say for example, a hydrogen-powered diesel generator. And when you do that, what are the ancillary benefits you would like to have? So there are many such products, many such solutions, but I think the key remains a seamless integration into the grid for today and for the coming generations. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Shivani, for illustrating that much further in terms of technologies that do exist, what's to expect in that space, and what implications the technologies themselves will have for the grid that is transforming. So it really is also a two-way street in that direction. And I would like to take the floor now to you, Viviana. You're head of market strategy and regulatory analysis at Enel Grids. You have 25 years of experience in global generation, business development, carbon credits as well, building on carbon that we've just heard from Shivana. Can you speak to us about the pilot project also from Enel Grid side in Colombia? What's going on in that space and how, of course, that connects to the bigger issues that we are discussing today?
Thanks, Anna, and let me express also from my side, I'm glad and honored to be here to celebrate, let's say, this initiative, and thanks to the collaboration of Italian Ministry and the international agency, the capability to give answer to a big challenge like the transition is bringing on the table, in particular for electricity grids. We have seen in the previous panel that is pretty clear that the majority of renewable growth will happen on medium and low voltage, and this will create a tremendous impact and the needs and responsibility from distribution operator to do more of the conventional role. And I think that this is already happening. In 2022, we connect 5 times the prosumers of the previous year, so we reach like near to 500,000 versus 100,000 prosumers. Sort of more than 5 gigawatt of renewable capacity on democratic, let's say, territory. Moreover, we have also the mobility, and so how the demand is keeping parts of the energy from these sides. I think that the challenge needs to be to find an answer in the challenge, and this is the scope of the NFX projects in Colombia, because we need that the distributed resources will participate to find. So it's just about consumers, but in general terms about prosumers that can answer to that. And the key area of topics that the project will struggle to find solution is about also regulatory aspect in terms of how to enhance the current frame and regulation on local flexibility market, because it's a new market, only few countries are deployed this market, and we need also to collaborate, to integrate among the players to find common solution for that. On the innovative space, because it's clear that we need not just to answer with the standard solution, but to find a new solution, and the project will find a way that the resources will cooperate, integrate as a platform with the network for enhancing the operation of the network through the product of flexibility. So any answer from the resources will become part of the operating solution for the network. This does mean that the network has not to deploy investment, but should optimize. And this has to be done also with cost-benefit analysis. That's clear, was mentioned before, is very important in K, because we need a lot of investment to challenge this transition, and we need to create priority. And this also flexibility could be part of this capability of creating priority. And the third aspect is about this participation. So we need stakeholders, and in particular consumers, prosumers, completely in the game. It's not a game of the distributor that have to challenge the prosumer, but it's a common game. And I think these are the 3 aims of the project, and is in general terms what we have in our portfolio of projects trying to do also in other countries. So we have a project in Italy, also in the umbrella, let's say, of the sandbox of the regulatory area asking for distributor for a market of flexibility. We have a project in Spain, also more concentrated on the flexibility resources from mobility, another one from demand response, and also we are near to launch also a project in Brazil, also very similar to the Colombian project.
Yeah, wonderful to see that all these examples are really taking root in many different areas of the world, bridging back to Audrey's point this morning. So challenges happen in many countries, they share a similarity, and so to be applying this across different countries is definitely a way to prove that as well. Time is a bit against us, as usual, on interesting panels. But I would like to maybe do a quick lightning round in terms of a follow-up question per each. And I want to start actually with a duo, Daniele, Pankaj, because you both spoke about scale. You both are mentioning big market potential in your respective spaces, tried and tested models really already well behind. You're thinking of the next stage, how to scale that all up. How do we shift the needle on that to get to where both of you would like to see those markets go? And I'll let you decide how you want to take that.
Thank you so much, Pankaj. Thank you, Anna, for your question. Before answering your question, I want to make a statement. We call in these 3DEN activities pilots. What I wish is actually, there's no proof of concept, there's no testing, there's no piloting. This has to be real to scale. It's about integration of technology that we already know what to do. We as Planet, because we are a digital business unit, developed the digital platform to insert flexibility of the demand in the equation. We have a Planet app for final users. Pankaj, I'm sure you have an amazing technology in India. It's not about, there's a lot of learning, but there's no testing. We need to do it. And this is a wish for all the activities on this panel. Scale for us is very easy, Anna. I'm going to give you two numbers. Planet Smart City, and so far we never missed one actually milestone as an objective, because in the last 2 years we sold 2,000 apartments every year, and we are basically building now 10,000 apartments in India, Brazil, Colombia, and United States. We want to get in 8 years as a company that produces, design, build, and sell more than 40,000 apartments every year. It looks like a lot. It's not. 50% of these apartments will be for India, because India is about volumes, right? So this is normal. The other countries will be sure Brazil, Colombia, but we also are in Mexico and Vietnam in Asia. And then we're done. In 2022, this is a company that will have a top line of more than $2 billion. We will have make our investors happy, more than everything, our people happy. Come and visit our developments. What we fuel are not energy systems, are the life of people. And this is so people-centric that this is why I said before that the Italian ministry was visionary, because doing this kind of activities and giving us the possibility to implement something that radically changes the life of people is key. So this is to answer the scale question, Anna. The second thing is, my beneficiaries, if the mortgage every month is more than, let's say, $10 more, they won't buy the house. This is the level of income we're talking about. So anything I can do to give them efficiency and savings, from the point of view of the money in their pockets, kilowatt hours, and for the younger people also decarbonization, because they want that, we will all win. Thank you.
Pankaj, to you, and actually right after also to you, David, on investment, how to reach that to scale. You mentioned this, please.
Yeah, so again, I completely agree with David that it is not really about pilot. I think 310 is a very, very important program, but it's really about finding a business model which does not have to eventually depend on subsidy. And then the scale will come naturally. And I think that is what the way this program has been designed as well is a very good combination of looking at real-life problem with some really commercial technology, giving that kickstart, and then scaling up, finding a business model on its own. Then you do not want to have subsidy, because if you keep depending on subsidy, it's like a drug. You will never be able to scale. So I think that, to me, is really the strength of this program, and that is what our objective is. The market is there, just to find the right way to it. And it's clear, we all know now that today, in India, solar energy is the cheapest form of energy. Yeah. Period. Right? So I think, it's now about how do we integrate it, how we find the right business model.
Yeah. The impact through business, David, you said it, it's a business. Make it scale needs to come from a sound business, with a sound business model that provides the resources not to ask money for the public administration. They need to look after education and health. We, as business people, need to solve this issue with business money that's generated from what we do.
David, would you like to comment on investment there?
Absolutely.
Very briefly, I'm very sorry.
That's fine. When it comes to the way we deploy energy solutions, coming from the people perspective, we also need to look at how we can improve the capacity to pay. Mm-hmm. And when we deploy energy solutions, we need to deploy it with the sense, how can we improve the life and livelihoods of these people through the way we deploy energy solutions. So like, we have a lot of solutions in rural communities. We see that typically if you have a farmer who would wait a couple of months to harvest his product and he sells at that level, he would not be a rich man, he would just be an average farmer. But when there's the element of agro-processing that comes in, that increases the value 4x, 5x. So we need to be able to look at these sectors, because when we look at energy access, you're looking at different other sectors that are interconnected. And so we need to look at it from their perspective for its uptake. But much more importantly, when we find models that are already existing, there has to be sharing of information, there has to be, these entities need to be given the kind of incentive that they require to scale, but more importantly, also ensure that there are programs that create an enabling environment for new entrants. Because one company, you don't want to be labeled, each company is looking at its own market share, but we need to look at more players on the scene who can now approach it from a broad perspective. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, David. And I'd like to turn, we had a lightning round with 3 speakers, we have 3 other speakers. I'd like to hear your quick thoughts just on a few key topics. Miriam, I'd like to hear from you on skills. How the methodologies that you're using, that you're really putting forward, is really helping you also to upskill what is going on in your in the industry companies. And from Shivani, if I may, to hear if you have any distinct elements on international collaboration, for example, because that's what the next panel is going to be about. And Viviana, if I can hear from you in a few words, what the new DSO role, the DSOs that you have been discussing, that you've been setting out, where do you think we stand there in terms of regulation? What will that mean going forward? What should we keep in mind? On a lightning round, Miriam.
Well, thank you, Anna. Indeed, actually, people is a very important dimension in businesses and in this project as well, because it helps valorization of people and upskilling our workforce. First, by job creation and transformation, because when we invest, when we implement new technology tools, it means that we need high qualified profiles that were people who are skilled in software development, in analytics. The second point is about training. I mean, having the digitalization of our systems, it creates opportunity for people, for our employees to be trained, to go through upskilling and training programs in order to enhance their capability to follow up with the implemented system. And the last one is access to real-time information, because when we have the information or the data reachable, people or the workers are not obliged to lose their time looking for the data, and they are focused on added value tasks rather than losing time on searching everywhere of data.
Shivani?
Yeah, I remember the lightning word, Anna. Yeah. Okay, thank you. So coming to the wonderful word that you've mentioned, international collaboration, I think that's what IEA and the 3DEN project is a very amazing example of. And when we talk of, the grid integration, when we talk of decarbonization, we have different countries who are at different stages. Like my friend Reena, she mentioned carbon neutrality goals of each country by 2050, 2060, and in fact, there were few countries who also had to revise their commitment due to different various reasons. So what remains on the collaboration front is that, yes, Anna, we need to come out of that tug of war between, who takes the first step first, and first let the policy come, then the manufacturing would work, and then the consumer, the utilities, and so on. Sustainability, decarbonization is the North Star. All of us have to move towards it. It's only the speed that matters, the scaling up that matters. And when we say this, the implementation has to be in a very well-phased manner, where we see that, yes, this particular country, whether it is already developed, is it in the developing stage, we do have the specific unique characteristics of each country, we collect the best practices, the lessons learned, which may essentially not be a copy-paste, but a very useful kind of document for the other countries, and that's where we would have long-term policy measures, we would have the grid codes, which ensure that the integration of all these technologies, digital, decarbonization, are made seamlessly, where we are aware of what situation we are into, what country we are into, what is the kind of sources, the kind of risk, the kind of climate changes. And when we say climate change, it's not, just some weather change and we sit at one place. If you talk from the power grid point of view, there's a cloud, the generation goes off. There could be a substation fire. There are things we are exploring in case you have to excavate. How do you go about it, and so on. And also decarbonization to the extent of the circular economy as well. Can you have some usage of the second-hand HV equipments in place, and so on. So there's so much that we can do globally, and collaboration, I think, is the key, where all of us, as somebody said, that we need to talk, because there are people who have gone through the same experiences. We may go through it in the future, and that's how we do not reinvent the wheel, but we do a seamless integration. We are aware of the situation, and we are confident with the operation for the generations to come, that yes, this is a seamless, a secure, a reliable grid, a smart grid, a digital grid, which we are handing over to you, and then it remains seamless, and the consumer ultimately doesn't have to remember us for some outage or for some costly power, and so on. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Shivana. And the final words to wrap up our panel here today.
Yeah, I think that for the flexibility market, we need more and more sandbox to exercise and standardize a little bit the product in order that we have common language and we can replicate easily and plug and play, let's say, similar market elsewhere with the adaptation that is necessary, clearly. On the innovative solution, we need also that regulation should be more and more an output-based regulation, in my opinion, because it's important to have correlation in between the effort and the results. And this has been done in several countries, but probably we need to correlate and think best practice for that. It's about resilience. We can do this about smart meter, any type of device or digital implementation, especially when it's massive, the need.
Thank you very much to my fellow panelists for helping me keep with time and for giving such incredible insights on the fascinating work you do. Thank you. Please join me for a round of applause. Let's see, yes. And with that, I'd like to segue straight to our next and final discussion of today, to be looking at our next topic, where we will be looking towards the future. And I know we've already been looking towards the future because that's essentially, we're talking about power systems and where we will be going towards that, how that can help us really reach our climate goals, our energy transition goals, our energy security goals, affordability, access, and so on. But the point is now to really discuss how can we prepare for the power system, the grids of the coming decades. What can we do about that starting today? And how can international collaboration help? And I have the great pleasure of inviting our next speakers to join us here on stage, Mr. Luciano Martini, Ms. Berta Dlamini, Ms. Agnes da Costa, Ms. Jiang Limping, Mr. Chris Dunstan, Mr. Samir Rashidi, and Mr. Andre Silviu Covatario. So please help me and join me in a round of applause for our next speakers, for our final panel of today. And if I can have some help, thank you very much. To introduce, just set a bit of the scene on the discussion that we will be having in just a moment. I'm very happy to hand over the floor to Mr. Luciano Martini and to give some setting the scene remarks on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Good afternoon, everyone in the room and also connected remotely. Not much time to sit on my seat. I have to stand up right away. Okay, so I'm very glad to be here today. I think it's great to be at this very nice, interesting event organized by 3DEN. I think I'm also excited to set in the scene for the important discussion will take place soon in a minute with a distinguished panelists from really around the world, many continents represented here. And the topic is one that I like the most is about the role of international cooperation, the importance of international cooperation to accelerate development in innovation, especially in the field of the power sector. Today I will speak on behalf of two leading global initiatives, namely the Green Power Future Mission in the framework of Mission Innovation and the ISGAN, the IEA TCP on smart grids. And the key message from these two initiatives are that 3DEN is really an outstanding project we would like to collaborate with, and we fully recognize the importance of a topic that 3DEN is addressing, namely, and very importantly, power system digitalization, demand response, energy efficiency. We also like the special attention to the distribution network. This is the part of the system that changes already and is going to change the most because of the trend of integrating massive amount of renewable energy sources, especially when we talk about distributed energy resources. So it's clear that we have to find and leverage a synergy among initiatives. That's why 3DEN and GPFM are looking at 3DEN as an important initiative to link. We have synergy. We have also to develop complementarities. For example, GPFM is not having a focus on developing country or emerging economies. That's why 3DEN is important to us, because we can expand our view to see which are really the innovative solutions to be implemented in the grid that matter for those countries. And what is really important is to pay attention to what we can do by international cooperation. I'm a big fan of international cooperation because I believe it's the easiest way to accelerate the development and the pace of innovation. We have so much to do, and by linking each other, by working together, by exchange and harmonize our program, we can advance faster. So a key word we heard before in the panel is accelerating, and to accelerate we need to exchange view. We are to be able to really compare solutions and to make sure that those solutions are applicable in the different power system context. So we don't only like the topic that 3DEN is about, but also the approach. I think the approach is very welcome. On one side, you develop a pilot project, you want to see really an application, implementation of your solution that maybe was proven in the lab and now in the real environment, in the real grid. And this is really fully in line with the Green Power Future Mission. And then on the other side, you want to inform a policymaker about what is already available, what other countries already did. So in this way, this is very relevant to ISGAN, because informing policymakers about what are the needed solution, what are the needed funding for those solutions to be implemented is really clear. So guideline, recommendation for policymakers, I think is an outstanding important issue. That's why I'm really glad that this first report from 3DEN is now alive, because we want to look at it, we want to see it, we want to disseminate these results. I think I can close just by saying that I'm very eager to listen to our distinguished panelists. The new ways for international cooperation, we can certainly do more. We can certainly do far beyond what we are doing today, exchanging view and other things, but maybe there is a way that we can maximize this link and make our collaboration fruitful. We look for a win-win situation where everybody can advance faster to our main challenges that are so huge that we need to join forces. And thank you to 3DEN for giving help on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Luciano, for setting the scene. Please. And to set the scene for this final discussion, I think international collaboration is the key word here. So with our panel here, let's focus on some of the actions that, in your view, we need to be taking to be taking digitalization to the next level, decades from now, really taking a long-term view, and in which ways collaboration can help. In this sense, I think we've got an excellent representation, such variety coming from all different continents indeed. And Bertha, maybe if I can start with you. You are the founding president of African Women in Energy and Power, seeking to accelerate the participation of women in Africa's energy and power sector, and have held numerous industry roles in the energy sector in South Africa and beyond. Africa has its own challenges, as we've already been discussing in the previous panel, but a lot of potential there. How should we appreciate the scope of the challenge here from an African perspective, and what should we know about that to be able to really look ahead?
Thank you, Anna, and good afternoon, everyone who has stayed behind to listen to this discussion. We're quite delighted to join this esteemed panel of speakers. Digitization, deregulation, decentralization, and decarbonizations are drivers of transformation in the power sector globally, and more so in Africa. On the continent, we are looking at a number of issues. In fact, if I can give you a metaphor to visualize a Rubik's Cube with all its multiple dimensions, is how you should consider the African continent and the opportunities and challenges it presents. We have 600 million people that have no access to electricity. So you also have to think of the difference between energy security and energy poverty. And as you overlay this transition that is required, you have to ask the question, what is priority for the different countries on the continent? Because there isn't one Africa. There's 55 countries with different identities, different challenges, and different priorities, and different capacities to generate revenue for their state responsibilities. 600 million people with no access to electricity, 900 million people with no access to cooking energy. The president of the African Bank said recently that for the continent to achieve Sustainable Development Goal number 7, it would need to electrify 90 million people per year. And it would need to move 130 million people from dirty cooking fuel to clean cooking alternatives per year. And this is at a current environment where attracting, sustaining, or retaining investment, clean energy investment, is still a challenge for the continent. In fact, we've had a call that developing countries should make good with their commitment that they made at the various COP gatherings to raise $100 billion a year to fund energy transition, but not only energy transition, to fund electrification on the continent. And so when you consider these dynamics, you have to let's look at a different dimension of the Rubik's Cube that I gave you as a metaphor. Creating an inclusive energy ecosystem on the continent is necessary to ensure that women, youth, and persons with disability can participate as professionals, as value-adding service providers across existing and emerging value chains. Some of the value chains that the transition will require have not even been created or don't even exist on any one of the markets on the continent. So at the genesis of this transition, there lies in an opportunity for a multi-stakeholder collaborative effort that ensures that the energy sector transitions and it becomes inclusive, and truly the continent can move people from poverty. A recent report was released, when I say recent, it's literally off the press. It was released yesterday by McKinsey, talking about the fact that Africa is home to the world's youngest and fastest growing population, with its population expected to nearly double to 2.5 billion by 2050. This is given the old infrastructure of the limited electricity capacity that exists on the continent, that is already straining because of rapid urbanization that we are seeing. It says Africa will add 796 million people to the global workforce by 2050. By 2030, the services sector, on its current trajectory, will create at least 85 million net new jobs. And if you're talking about new jobs, you're obviously talking about new skills that must be supported. And so the narrative also that Africa does not have the requisite skills is also not truly true. There are engineers, and actually women are graduating at a faster rate than men from universities and from STEM fields. The necessity for exposure to operations, to projects that are already advanced in digitalization, in decarbonizations of systems that are existing, is what is necessary. And so the philosophy of partnership with Africa has to change across the globe. If we are partnering to bring technology and repatriate revenues out of the continent, without transferring the skill, without transferring the market participation, Africa will not change. And so we are requiring, and we are seeing as an organization, identifying entry points across value chains for women, youth, and persons with disabilities to participate. We're identifying that there is a need for access to market, there is a need for access to technology, to on-trade, there is a need for access to finance for entrepreneurs. This is at a point when the African Union has launched an African single market electricity, African single electricity market, a master plan that is being built that will interconnect the entire continent, 55. Absolutely incredible opportunities that require a different way of partnership and collaborating.
Thank you, Bertha, for making this point so eloquently. We need to reimagine partnerships. This is more than important, and we clearly understand from your point of view, indeed, why that is and why this is so urgent. Thank you for making that point. Maybe if I can move to you now, Ms. Agnes da Costa. You're Executive Director of the Brazilian Electricity Regulatory Agency. You've spent many roles in Brazil's electricity sector, also at the Ministry of Mines and Energy. What's your perspective from Brazil, maybe to transition from Bertha's point here? We've spoken about Brazil also earlier today. Where do you think, from the challenges that the electricity sector is facing, where digitalization could play a role? And maybe you could highlight some good practices happening in Brazil in terms of regulatory innovation.
So thank you very much. I'm very pleased to be here. I loved what you thought about Africa now and the women. So from our side, we are always open to build partnerships in this way. I'm also very active in the empowerment of women, especially younger women in the energy sector, so we can work it together for sure. So one of the best things of speaking at the end is that we change a lot what we will speak, listening to what people have spoken before. So what are the things that I wanted to highlight on the experience in Brazil, considering what was mentioned here today? I love today when we were discussing that we should work together to design protocols that are made universally available. But then, what is the point from states, from the side of the state, of the government, is that sometimes you don't have the answers ahead. Things are changing so fast that you need also the agents of each country to come also with solutions and ideas. But of course, we cannot, we have to work in this paradigm and work with the two efforts. So trying to think together in protocols and standards, but also listening to what is coming from the private sector, from the agents in each country, to see if this is something that is feasible. And then the other comment that I loved that has to deal with it is that there is an availability of an enormous amount of data in the sectors. So this is one agenda that I recently decided to work on in ANEL, because this is really true. So we have a single system operator in Brazil in this enormous system, and I have started talking to the agents and say, oh, so you send a lot of data to the operator. Yes, we send. And what does the operator do with your data? Oh, we don't really know. We know when something goes wrong, they go and look into the data. And I say, but do you think that if we sat together with the agents and looked into this data, that you could use it in a more creative ways to come up with technical solutions and, of course, to increase the reliability of the system? Oh, of course. And so sometimes there is knowledge in the agents, and we have seen here from people who have been working with this, and so governments have to sit with these agents and incite them to come up also with the solutions, and so that we can see what the bottleneck is or what is missing in terms of regulation, so that we can work on it. So because we don't have these answers ahead. What else? And another thing, then looking to international cooperation, that when we have the data, is what you were mentioning here, we were mentioning here, then we can measure things. So we have been working very closely with the IEA, collecting and informing data on, for example, energy innovation. And this could be done also with all this data that we have on system reliability and all those things. So these are things that then we can share, and then share with other countries and share best practices as well. What else? We have spoken also a lot of the modernization of tariffs, and I love the point that the pilot projects were not really pilots, they were more scaling up things. So what have we been doing in ANEL? We have been designing tariff sandboxes. So we are trying new tariff designs, modernizations, using digital meters in specific areas of concessions, and seeing how this works and how we can change tariff designs, and if this works, then we can scale up to the whole country. So these are things that we are doing at the regulatory level. Then we have talked about distributed energy resources. It is in the regulatory agenda at ANEL. So several technologies we have been analyzing and seeing how we can foster their implementation if there is need for regulation. But what we have been seeing and witnessing, and this is something that I commented on a panel before, is all the services that are being created by the agents behind the meter. So services, they are helping industries to decarbonize. They are coming up with solutions for energy efficiency. So when we have all this digitalization and data, this makes life much more easier for people who want to add value to the sector with other services that we didn't have before.
Yes.
Yes, I think so last topic then, to conclude this. So international collaboration, I think it's very important to create the ecosystem of interested parties that can share best practices, experiences, and also a place for capacity building. But on the other hand, what is a problem for me, or maybe for developing countries, is that there are so many initiatives that it's sometimes too hard to participate, because you have to follow up a lot of things at the same time, and sometimes they are talking of similar things in different initiatives. So this is sometimes hard. So I think we might, I don't know, together think a bit more about this governance of all these discussions on similar topics. So yes, this would
would be my points.
Thank you very much, Agnes, because you've actually summarized so many important points mentioned today. It's almost like a recap of the entire event. But I underline very much your point on data. I think we could have talked about that a lot more, in fact, because it really seems to be also a red thread between all speakers, in fact, on this. So thanks a lot for this. If, you know, after hearing the African perspective, the perspective from Brazil as well, could I turn to you, Jiang, on coming in from China, where, you know, of course, so much is changing at tremendously rapid speed. Indeed, you're consultant at the SGCC and former VP at the State Grid Energy Research, so working very hard on the energy transition in China. A couple of words maybe on what digitalization means in China right now and the trends that you see going forward.
Thank you, Anna. It's a big pleasure for me here, and I think all the discussion is quite interesting. And I can say, technically, I can say each country have the similar challenges, but for China we have three. I think we have three specific ones. One is we are still in the demand grid, demand increase period in the next 20 years. And we have might be the biggest power system in the world. And it's needed to be decarbonization and to be neutral within less than 40 years. And also the market building is still on the way. It's not ready. So I think that's a big challenge for the China's power sector. So in this sense, we think the digitalization should have a huge help for us to face this kind of challenge. And we can say the government already issued the data digitalization planning guidance, and also the government take power sector as the main, the main place to promotion the digitalization. So that's a good news for us, but also it's a pressure. It's also a pressure. Pressure, yes. So anyway, it's a good news. And we can say we have another good news is the power sector enterprise have been put to the digitalization as a main core task to promotion. And also we have the other, internet enterprise into this area. For example, for Tencent, Huawei, and Alibaba. So I think this guy is coming into the power sector. It's a good news for the digitalization, I think. Yeah. Anyway.
Thank you very much, Jiang, for making these really good points and these direct, the indications of what still is driving all this digitalization going forward in China. Tremendous demand increase still, a lot ongoing and a lot to happen, much more. Thank you for this. Could I turn to you, Chris? You are adjunct associate professor at University of Technology in Sydney, have worked, played a key role in the country's most significant energy innovations here. Can we speak a bit to what has already been alluded to, cost, pricing, and how that plays into digitalization? So how do we approach a least cost strategy to the decarbonization, the future of grids, to really build on that?
Thank you, Anna. Yes, I also wanted to express my appreciation for the opportunity to be here. I think it's a great event, and appreciation to the IEA and to UNEP and also to the Italian government. And I think it's perhaps fitting that I should follow Jiang, because I understand, I don't know if it's true or not, but I'm told that there is a Chinese curse that you would say to someone, may you live in interesting times. In Australia, if I look back 25 years ago, the energy sector was not very interesting. It was actually quite boring. We had about 82% coal-fired electricity. Electricity prices were fairly low and constant, and things seemed to chug along quite quietly, apart from the fact that we had one of the dirtiest, most carbon-intensive electricity industries in the world. But things are not boring anymore. And I think that's, when we look in terms of international collaboration, this is an area where Australia can actually be of use to other countries, because we're going from, as I said, 82% coal-fired electricity. We had about 10% renewable energy 20, 25 years ago. Last year we had 35% renewable energy, and we have a government policy that by 2030 we will have 82% renewable electricity, and that will be dominated by wind and solar power. That's so interesting, it's a bit scary. So if we're going to achieve that, and we need to do that for decarbonisation reasons, but also in terms of reliability, because we can't build fossil fuels electricity generation anymore, then we're going to need a lot of flexible capacity. We're going to need truckloads of it. And that then goes to the question of what is the most cost-effective way of achieving that resource. And we're still struggling in Australia to even work out how we ask that question. I think they say that history doesn't repeat, but it does rhyme, and I'm conscious that it was 50 years ago when we had the first, or the major global energy crisis. Will soon be 50 years. And out of that, a few things happened. The OECD established the International Energy Agency was one thing. Another thing that we learned out of that, it took a little longer, was the need to take a balanced, strategic, holistic approach to solving our energy problems. And some people called that integrated resource planning. Other people call it least cost planning. But the essence of it was to how do we achieve what we want to achieve at the lowest cost? And if we look at how we apply that today, we feel like we're reinventing the wheel, where we can draw from that. If we apply those fundamental principles of a least cost strategy, number one is purpose, being clear about what the objectives are. Number two is about people, it's about participation, and you can't develop your purpose, your objectives, unless you engage with the people that they're intended to serve. The third one goes directly to your question, Anna, about pricing. And if we can't have effective and efficient pricing, then there is no way we'll get a least cost outcome. And the final two elements are to consider all of the options, not just a subset, but all of the relevant options. And finally, in doing that, to consider all of the relevant costs. And the question is, well, what are the relevant costs? Well, again, you can only answer that by going back to what's your purpose and to the participation of the people. So I think they are very useful mechanisms or elements that we can address globally in trying to solve this global problem. And I have some more, but I think I might leave it there, Anna.
Thank you very much, Chris. You've said a lot of very interesting things, but what stuck in my mind was energy used to be boring. It's not boring anymore. So I might steal that. Thank you very much, Chris, for those points. Can I turn to you, Samir Rashidi? You are acting director of IRESEN, so of the Institute of Energy Research in Morocco, which complements in a very long-term manner the decarbonisation pathways and national strategies that the Kingdom has set on research and innovation in particular. So it would be great to hear from you. What do you think the role of research and innovation is, and especially how international collaboration can take place around that from your country's perspective?
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak and for the kind invitation. Well, it's really interesting for us because we were created kind of recently, like 12 years ago, and the idea of the let's say the founders of the institute was to support the energy transition of the country by that time, from the scope or the point of view of innovation and R&D. And I liked so much the phrase or the sentence from Bertha that I will quote again. And we have many Africas, and in my Africa, or my country, Africa, Morocco, we had a challenge that was that we were, and we are still dependent, like 97.5% from fossil imports. It's quite also unique in Africa. Normally, lots of African countries have their own fossil resource, but we are a sort of exception. And we were also with a big ambition to grow, economically speaking. So we need to energize this, and we felt like we need to have a virtuous cycle and try to get out from this boring, let's say, day-to-day life. So the idea, from our point of view back that time, was really to build on our capabilities, mainly, and tremendous renewable energy potential that we have. We are known for solar, but we are having lots of wind and also some hydro, and the idea was to build on that in order to try to be less dependent from imports, and to be resilient, which is a very nice, fancy word that is useful today and is trendy, and to be able to energize our own economic development. Especially, we have lots of ambitions and also expectations from our youth that are also part of the international youth we have today. And from this point of view, let's say, if I have to summarize and to answer really quickly your question, our role, as I see it as a researcher, is really to demystify technology, to help also adapt technology to the local context, and by context I mean the constraints, but also the opportunities. And if I give an example, for example, solar panels in our countries, they are designed differently, they are designed elsewhere, but when you try to test them, or at least to work with them in our context, in my Morocco, we can find at least 2 or 3 challenges that you cannot find here in Europe, for example. One example is the UV, for example, the high ultraviolet irradiation that reduces the yield typically of a solar panel. And another challenge that we face in our research facility is dust. So just to give you those examples to see that there is, and Bertha says this, there is no transportation to have, or to a copy paste of technology to be. We need somehow a sort of vehicle to localize and to adapt this technology to the local market. The other thing I would say, and it's kind of an ambition for myself and for my fellow colleagues, is really to help co-localize the industry. Because when you start with by demystifying technology, then you understand what are your boundary conditions, what are your needs, what are your constraints, and also when you start to build capacity around and expertise around the technology, it's then for you easier to create an economic answer to that. And from this point of view, I would say that we have kind of succeeded in developing some let's say, pépite, as we say in French, some success stories or startups that face somehow those challenges, but we will have probably the opportunity to discuss about it later.
Thank you, Samir, for illustrating in which way IRISEN is taking the lead on research and development within Morocco and trying to demystify technology, making sure that that goes in the direction to accompany all the targets, all the objectives set for Morocco, for the region, and also for Africa as a wider whole. Turning to you now, André, you're an international energy policy specialist, co-chair of the UN Economic Commission for Europe and Digitalization Energy Task Force. So you work on this vastly with many different think tanks on these topics. Can you maybe give us your take on how international collaboration takes this forward? Because I think that's what you do a lot throughout your work. And if digitalization is a uniting force in this vis-a-vis a dissociating force.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the invitation, and also from my side, congratulations to the 3D team for the report published today. Mindful of time, I will just, I'll try to not be redundant with my fellow panelists. A lot of very interesting points raised here, but I'll just mention 3 quick points which I think are important. One is that I think we are living in quite a polarized world when it comes to how to approach the energy transition process. A lot of scenarios, a lot of proposals on how to do that. But one common denominator, if you want, among all stakeholders, no matter the part of the spectrum they come from, is digitalization. No one disagrees with that. It's not a casus belli. Everyone is fond of that, probably because we are all, on a personal level, aware of the benefits unlocked by digitalization in general in other sectors. So I think this is important and critical for all of us, policymakers, decision makers, analysts, whoever we are, to build on that, to take this ground and build on top of that, and to steer our scenarios towards net zero. Because we are indeed moving from a one-way energy flow system to a two-way energy and data flow system. And that's actually bridging to my second point, the data part. We've discussed about that, and I think it's important. Because, of course, there are, in the energy sector, electricity sector, we have data that is for marketing purposes, like any other sector, of course. But the data that we urgently need and we lack is actually the one related to system efficiency. So operational efficiency, efficiency in general, how to help socially and economically help end users, and so on and so forth. So in that sense, and bridging to the international collaboration, I think peer sharing, and more important than ever probably, a collective race to data, I think that's important because I do agree that problems are the same when we talk about digital starting points and digital solutions. And only by doing that we will basically unlock system efficiency, and we will grasp the full benefits of digitalization. And the last point that I want to make, which I think is very important, we often talk about digitalization as a cross-topic, let's say, element or concept. And I'm bridging here with what Vida was mentioning. To some extent, I think we are taking digitalization sometimes for granted because it's a cross-cutting concept. It's somehow similar to grids. Everyone is discussing about grids, and everyone is discussing about scaling up renewables, but not too many people are talking about the need for grids in order to accommodate that. Somehow it's similar to digitalization. We discuss about that like it's there, or it will be developed organically. We don't need to, focus that much on that, which I think it's not correct, fully correct. We still need policies, we still need incentives in different forms to focus investments and projects into that, and to bring these pilot projects that we have discussed today at scale, because only at scale we will see the full benefits, not only having scattered successful stories, but still scattered stories. And I'll close here for the moment. Thank you.
Andrea, you mentioned here digitalization seems to really be a common denominator among us all. I think that is probably the best way to wrap up not just this session, but actually also the event that has gathered us here today. I thank you very much for having been on this panel, and I'd like to ask the audience to join for a round of applause. Thank you very, very much, and I'd now like to leave the closing remarks to Vida Rosite, who's the 3DEN program lead, because we've arrived to the end of our program today, and I'd like to extend another warm thanks to all the speakers having been here with us today. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Anna. And thanks to all the speakers and panelists. I won't even attempt to try and summarize all the valuable insights, the experiences, the suggestions that have been shared today. I've been taking notes. I ran out of paper, but I know that my colleagues have been taking notes. We'll take all of this on board. I know that you've given us all here in this room and all of us online food for thought. There are lots of topics that resonated. We have similar challenges. A theme that came across very strongly is it's time to act. There is a looming sense of urgency. The digitalization of power systems does involve challenges, but the opportunities are vast. And international collaboration plays a huge role, and especially as an accelerator. So I'll leave my summary at that. I'll thank again all our speakers. I'll thank our excellent moderator, Anna. Thank you for helping us navigate this complex but hugely exciting area. As we heard, we live in exciting times, and I think indications are they will only get more and more exciting. I'd also, again, thank our colleagues in UNEP for your support, and of course the Italian government for their foresight in spearheading this topic area and ensuring that we are part of a process towards accelerating progress. And of course I will thank my fantastic team at the IEA for all the hard work and all the support and all the preparations that went into making our report, making this event a success. So thank you very much. And yes. And then I'll just reiterate what Anna Lydia said. We are open to partnerships. Do reach out. As I said, we are looking to build our community. As we heard today, there are great opportunities for furthering international collaboration, finding synergies between initiatives. There's a lot in that space that we can all do together. You have our contact details. Reach out with ideas, with suggestions. As I mentioned, this is the first of a series of GRIDS reports. Please do share your best practices, your pilots, your experiences of scaling up. And we look forward to continuing to engage with you on what is an absolutely fundamentally crucial journey. So thank you all very much. And I'll just mention that for those of you who still have power left, there's an exciting session at 6 o'clock on revolutionizing energy efficiency narrative. That will be in room Luli. And then we have a reception with some food and drinks at 7 o'clock. So I hope to see you all there. Thank you very much.